What's going on, everybody? Cali Death Podcast back once again, episode 68. Here with a couple resident homies, Joel and Casey. We're missing the professor. We'll see him next time. But yeah, we are here again live with you on Twitch and YouTube. Is it Facebook too or no?
No, it's just those two right now.
All right, so those two. Thanks for being with us on your Thursday evening. You'll get this normally on Friday. If you can't see it live, it'll be up on Friday like it usually is. Let's get to Battle Force. Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Battle
Forge Coffee. At least I didn't say barrel, guys. BattleForgeCoffee.com. Hook it up, or the homies are hooking it up with some sick coffee, sick swag. They got all the shit. Go over there, help some friends out. You know, deeds of flesh. That's the fucking shit. So go help those guys out.
I almost got a French press today, so I can try it. But
you gotta get one. You gotta get the right grind. You gotta get the grind.
I know it's too expensive where I was at, but it was like some market. But I'm gonna get an Amazon one.
French press is only good when you grind it right, dude. So it's got to be coarse grind.
I'm like a lazy K cup, dude. I'm terrible. But I gotta try this bag, dude.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Feel bad.
Get a caffeine fix, dude.
Well,
but yeah,
I'm gonna do it tomorrow. You know what? Tomorrow is the day.
Nice, dude.
Oh yeah.
Hit them up, and yeah, we got nothing else. But today's our today's guest. God damn, I can't spit anything out right now.
You need French press coffee.
I did. That actually, you know what? You just made me realize, dude. I did not have a cup of coffee. I usually have a cup of coffee before this, but I had so little time to do anything before this. Anyways, it's cool, dude. What's going on, Yanic?
Hey,
Yanic
you doing all right?
Dave? Yeah, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
Quo Vadis is the project that I'm most familiar with, but I see there's Gone in April. There's this recording studios at Wave Transform Recording.
Yep, that's
studio.
right. That's correct. Yep.
So you've been a very, very busy dude, and I'm sure there's plenty of other bands that are on your list, dude. And but yeah, thanks for giving us your time and being with us.
This week, dude. Thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. And so, you know, let's just start it off, guys. Let's go straight into it. So how we usually do it is take us back as far as you can in memory when music.
Well, I just wanted to say too, like, you know,
oh yeah,
Quo Vadis, is that how you say it?
Yep.
Yeah, Quo Vadis, yeah.
It's like a really important band to us, like growing up. Like, I mean, I say growing up, but like the last, I don't know, 20 years, whatever, that we've been listening to him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And back when I was playing in Decrepit and stuff, and Joel and Anthony and all of our bands way back when we were doing that, we listened to you guys all the time, bro.
Obsessed.
You know, yeah. And like Matt from Decrepit Birth, like he was so influenced by you guys. We were like putting on like that DVD like all the time, dude. Like it was so sick.
It showed us you guys were independent, right?
What's the title of that DVD?
Yeah.
The first one that came out,
the album's called Define Imagination. The DVD is Define Indoctrination. So yeah,
that's right, dude.
Yeah.
Check that.
Was that filmed at the Medley?
Yep, that was at the Medley. Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
is that in Montreal?
That is in Montreal. Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, that
so
the way the way you guys put on your show and the theatrics involved, and you would never think that you were just an independent band, dude. And the songs are so good.
Yeah, well, we worked really hard. I mean, we were doing a lot of hours a week. I mean, each of us were either, like in school or working. And in addition to that, I mean, we were pulling Bart and I were doing probably about 40 hours a week on the band each at the time, right? So we were putting in a lot of time on that. So, but it was our passion. So when it's your passion, it doesn't feel like it's work, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the really cool thing about it. But yeah, it's kind of weird that over the years, I guess when you're involved in the project and you're working nonstop, it's almost like, you know, the forest from the trees kind of thing, you know? So when you hear people talk about the band like that, and, you know, after so many years of taking a step back, you know, to kind of look back on it and hear what people say, you just kind of look at it a little bit different. So yeah, it's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. Totally,
definitely.
Dude.
All the cool art aspects too, with the dancing and stuff like that. There was like a bunch of stuff that we had never seen in like a live DVD like that. Like
all the choral parts are an actual chorus singing them, you know.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah,
so that was really kind of a flavor that Bart was bringing to the to the table, I guess. And I kind of developed, you know, an interest for that a little bit later. but the in the DVD there was the body painting, the girls were body painting.
Mm-hmm.
That's Bart. The choirs, that was Bart. I mean, he listened to classical music a lot, so the kind of creative aspects, he was the one that was the lead on that. So what I mean by creative aspects, I mean artwork as well, right? I mean, I give my opinion a little bit here and there, but I was involved in different aspects of the band. But for him, that was definitely like the something that he was taking the lead on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it definitely impressed us, dude. I mean, that, like we said, dude, that, I don't know how many times we just chilled in the living room, and that would be if not us, one of us paying attention, it'd still be like in the background all the time, just like, this is how you death metal, dude. This is how you melodic death metal right here.
Yeah, and that first album, 96, right? Forever.
Yeah, that's Forever.
Dude,
that was released in 96. Yeah.
For 96, I mean, it slays now, but for 96, that's like just sounds really like ahead of its time. Like the drumming is
what up,
really
dog?
sick.
Well,
Dude. Sounds crazy.
So
good.
That album was, I guess,
too.
different in the way that, I mean, everything was recorded on 2-inch analog tape, and same with Day and Tonight. And
really?
Forever was mixed analog, which means back that there is no editing on that. What you hear is everything that is played. There are no edits. There are punch-ins, just like people do punch-ins. It's like, oh, I make a mistake, rewind it, punch me in, and you start recording to fix a mistake. But there is no editing whatsoever on that. So what you hear, that was recorded as is.
So
really tight.
Actually, one thing since you're talking about punch-ins, I know people always talk about it with because obviously we've lived in a digital age for our recording life. But so how does a punch-in work? Like, I know they have to cut up the tape and stuff, but are they recording like a separate track and then they're cutting up the section and then taping it in?
Yeah. So I think all the recordings that I've done with 2-inch tape and with 1/2-inch tape, actually, the Quo Vadis demo was done on 1/2-inch tape mixed in with some other digital formats like DAT tapes and stuff like that. But anyways, nonetheless, the punch-ins, how they were being done back then, I've actually not worked on a project where they actually cut the tape. Say, for example, if we did a punch-in on a drum recording, if we started recording the song here and then I made a mistake right here, what we do is, start the tape from here, and I'm going to start playing drums about right here and press record here before I make the mistake. You know what I mean? So it'd be kind of stuff like that we do, but we never actually had to cut the tape. So I know a lot of the big studios do, cut the tape, and I just have never worked on a project that has done that. But I've done a lot of tape recording. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the reason was for it. I don't know if it was done more in the 80s and less with time because of new ideas or technology. I don't really know the reason for that. But yeah, that's how we did punch-ins then. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
God, that's
wild.
Crazy. Super crazy.
Yeah.
So
like and the demo was actually in 95. So I don't know if people are aware of that, but we did a demo that was released in 95, and that was recorded in a guy's basement, actually, that he had like a very small home studio. And that was the guy that, like I said, had 1/2-inch tape and, some digital recording gear and stuff like that. And at the time, it was Bart and I and Ari. So Ari was the other guitarist with Bart, and there was me on drums. And we didn't have a bassist at the time. So the demo first got released without bass on it. I mean, we just didn't have a bassist. It was us three, and we did our stuff, and it was our first time recording as a band. And you got to remember, at that time we were 20 years old. Well, by the time it was released, we were 20 years old. So by the time we recorded, we may have been 19. And of course, technology being what it was at the time, it's not like today. Like just recently I produced a band in our studio here, and they're about, very close to 20 years old in that, but technology's so advanced and YouTube is advanced, everything that we didn't have back then. So we were 19 years old, and went into the guy's basement. His first name was Gilles. I can't remember his last name, but anyways, and we did that. And then I think a year later, we started recording the first album, which was Forever, which was released in 96, like you were saying. And I remember Bart at the time saying, hey, there's a sound engineer that works with the kind of known bands in Montreal. and his name was Pierre Rémillard. And I think actually when you guys had Steve on the show a few weeks ago, Steve DiGiorgio, he talked about Pierre also.
Okay.
So he was the guitarist from Oblivion. And so Bart had gotten in touch with Pierre, and he was busy on other projects. But finally, we ended up, having the opportunity to work with him. And he's the one that recorded and mixed, Forever. And that was done in a more kind of like professional recording studio setting. It wasn't, at the time, basically two small booths in a small, very small basement studio with a lot of carpet and eggshells. We didn't do that for Forever. So that was like a big deal for us, and that was like our first album, and we were 21 years old, and it's just, we were working hard for it. And because we were independent, we said, all right, well, let's budget for this. We're going to split this into 4 equal parts, and everyone does their, their own share in that. And we just continued to split stuff equally. And at one point doing CD sales, the money started coming in. So we actually had a band, fund, and taking money from that to start paying the studio. And the more we went, the more money we had in our band fund, and that so it was helping with other things. So yeah,
Totally, dude. That's awesome. And I want to get deeper into that, but I want to rewind a little bit because I want to hear all the stuff before Quo Vadis. I want to hear, like I said, that first spot where you can remember music becoming something important.
Yeah. So the first instrument I learned how to play that actually taking lessons was organ. And I think at the time I was 5 years old. And I think that's probably, I'm wondering why my parents put me in organ, but I'm wondering if it had to do that, in the 80s, all the synthesizers started coming out and pop music and stuff like that. So I don't know it was from that. But in French Canada, a lot of families come from a Catholic background, so I don't know if it had to do with the organ at church or something. I mean, I have no idea. But I started taking organ, and I took that for, I think, maybe 3 years, 2 years, something like that. So I learned some music theory, and very basic music theory at that time. And
what age is that?
That I was about 5 years old. Yeah, okay. About 5 years old, something like that, for maybe 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And so a few years later, when I started listening to heavy metal, I started listening to heavy metal when I was 9 years old. Or a bit earlier than that. Yeah.
How'd you come across it?
I think maybe the first times that I did, I had an interest in music was just not heavy enough. And I think I was looking at some of the older kids. And of course, back then they had the jean jacket with these crazy back patches on and the studs on there. I was like, man, that looks like intense music. I mean, it just looked like very intense music. And to me, I want to know what that is, right? I mean, I want to listen to that, and I just want to experience it. And then the kind of more I got into it, I think about 9 years old, The Twisted Sister, I think it was Stay Hungry. I think that was released in 84. I can't remember exactly, but anyways, around that time. And I enjoyed it, but it still wasn't kind of heavy enough, for me. It still felt like it was weak in terms of the intensity and just the music, but I enjoyed it because I didn't know anything different, and I'd look at people's back patches and go like, okay, that looks heavy. Let me go see what that band is about. So of course at the time, you go to a record store, which was records and tapes starting to come out at that time too, and checking out different things. And I eventually got into Iron Maiden, and then a few years later, the Metallica, and once Metallica, the Injustice for All, then it was pretty much like Slayer, Anthrax, all those bands, and then gotten into death metal and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so
you were just digging yourself then, huh?
Yeah, no one else from my friends was listening to that music, so it wasn't like I was getting that off people. I was looking for stuff, I mean, I didn't know, I had no references other than looking at older kids' back patches on their jean jackets going, wow, that looks like that looks crazy. I want to check what that is,
That's actually a new one for us on this show, like, because there is some commonalities in people's upbringings and getting into metal and stuff like that. But I have not heard somebody cite just looking at other people's back patches and patches, but which is hey, however you find your way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
and our generation was like back patches were like already. It was basically like you already knew all the bands that were on the back patches, and we were seeing like what they were trying to portray as being their like, this is what I'm into Venom, and I'm also into fucking Cannibal Corpse, and I'm into I'm into like these different bands. But yeah, it's crazy. Probably back in the day and stuff, that would be like, that's another form of kind of album like searching for, looking through artwork and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing to remember too is, I mean, this is like maybe middle of 80s, so there's no YouTube, there's no, hey, I'll download this MP3 on my phone. There's none of that. I mean, mobile phones were just starting, and they're nowhere close to back then to how they are now. So, I mean, there wasn't really a, hey, let me check this on my phone. There was none of that, So you had older kids that were listening to it, and record stores and magazines, And when you're 9 years old, it's not like you say, hey, I'm gonna, take the car and go to the record store and start looking through some stuff. I mean, you can't, So when your parents go, or you ask your parents, hey, I want to go and check this out, and then you just look forward to that happening. So
so what happens when you get a little bit older, get into your teenage years, and did you ever get into like the tape trading scene and all that stuff?
Not the trading scene, but I guess the tape scene, because I mean, I still have a lot of tapes upstairs. I mean, geez, a lot of tapes from the 80s, early 90s and stuff like that. I mean, it wasn't trading, but into tapes, yes. Yeah, but that was before CDs came out. So, the vinyls were kind of getting out, and tapes were coming in before CDs ever came along. So that,
Yeah, that was my first forms of physical music, was cassette tapes as well.
It's funny seeing the full circle of like, cassette tapes, and it went, or vinyl, cassette tapes, and now CDs. Now it's going, the CDs are going away. People are going back to tapes. I'm seeing all these bands just
didn't just Defeat Insanity, they just put out like a box set of cassette tapes.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, Decrepit has tapes out. People are,
you call it a tapeography.
People are like, oh, these are like vinyls, but they're like more convenient. It's so cool.
yeah. They sound not as good, but I mean, it's more for just to have it like a little trading card or something,
Yeah.
It's funny to see, and vinyls obviously have come back with the, people are getting vinyls all of a sudden now. So it's like,
people are missing the hiss, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? Like they want to hear like music put on. It's like,
remember when
when
your tape would just get eaten? Like you'd get like you'd buy like tapes were like $20, $15 back then in the day, like you're throwing it in your tape player, and you got like a shitty tape player, and all of a sudden like it just goes, and just like you have to like unwind it, and like that was like,
it's never the same.
Yeah,
I thought they sounded cool, but they're a pain in the butt, like in that way.
Definitely.
Had like a lot of bass.
Number two pencil, dude. Number two pencil.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
The rewind button, right?
I remember having CDs and like going camping, like when I was in high school, and like I would take this van out into the desert and just go like off-roading, like just destroy my old. It was terrible. But we got like a bunch of sand that came into the CD player, so I had like sand or like dust, sand like eternally in my CD player. So I was like, no, don't put a CD in there. Like there's just like
rip. Yeah.
Oh, it's just the worst, dude.
That doesn't sound very good.
I know, right? The CD ruiner.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So yeah, let's get back on the timeline and get into the teenage years, like high school. Was there any pre-Quo Vadis bands that you were?
Good question.
And like, when did you come across playing drums? Like, did you have other instruments after organ?
Yeah, after organ, when I started listening to heavy metal, then I was interested in the kind of loud electric guitar, right? Not so much the soloing, but the just kind of like the rhythm, kind of, distorted, and stuff like that, that I was really, kind of getting into it. And I remember talking to my parents and saying, hey, I'd really like to get an electric guitar and learn the guitar. And they said, if you want to learn guitar, you start with acoustic or classical, because that's where you'll get the techniques and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really was not interested in acoustic or classical, but that was the only way I was going to get to it. So I said, okay, so let's do it. And I think one of the issues at the time is I think, well, first of all, I wasn't like super intensely interested in acoustic guitar because I wanted to play electric. But my teacher at the time, when they're 30-minute lessons, and I was, I think, in grade maybe 5 or 6 at the time or something like that. So the lesson was basically me going in, and at least half of the lesson was him showing off what he was able to do, for me to go like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, that's so cool. And of course I was young, I didn't know any better, so I just listened to him. And the second half was him showing me a few things, and it wasn't really interesting to me because I didn't want to learn, oh, McDonald had a farm on a guitar. I wanted to do, friggin' Iron Maiden guitars and like metal guitars, and that just wasn't happening with that. So I think 6 months after, I just kind of lost interest in the acoustic guitar. And then, well, 2 years later, that's when I told my parents I wanted to play drums, and they said, yeah, well, we got you a guitar, and after 6 months, it's just there in the closet. So if you want a drum kit, you buy it, So basically you're not wasting our money. Yeah. And if you're really serious about it, you buy it. So I worked like crazy. I mean, cutting lawns in the summer, mowing lawns, and working at a grocery store. And I mean, I started working, I think, when I was like 16 years old, pretty much, like, mixed in with school and stuff like that. So in the summers I had, full-time hours, and I was working at like 7 places or something, and made money. And 6 months later, I bought the first drum kit, and here I am today, still playing drums. And it's been, it's going to be 33 years, I think, this year that I'm playing drums, something like that.
Damn,
so
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Who would have thunk it?
I know, right?
So what was the first year or so like with the drums? Was it just staying at home jamming yourself, or did you start jamming with other musicians?
Yeah, I mean, it started off before I got the drum kit. Is I used to skateboard, and I didn't have drumsticks. I didn't have a drum kit or anything. So I had, the rails on the side of the skateboards.
Mm-hmm.
So I would look at, of course, MTV that was on at the time at 5 or 5:30, that they'd have the metal hour and that, or something like that. So I'd watch the drummers, and I had my rails from my skateboard, and I would just kind of look at what the drummer was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the tom parts and the crashes, and I just kind of was just looking and trying to learn. And of course I was air drumming, right? I didn't have a drum kit, I didn't have anything, but at least some of the coordination,
dynamics,
I think, was kind of starting to develop a little bit. And I remember at one point, the father of one of my friends, who, when we were at his place, he came downstairs, and he was a musician, and he said, you should get a drum kit, because from what I can see from how you're playing with those rails, that instrument might be really good for you. So yeah, it just kind of developed into that. And and got the drum kit. And so the first year and a half, I think, was me playing by myself. And basically what I had is, I had at the time, my Walkman, right, with the cassettes, and had Slayer and Metallica and Anthrax, and I'd have that in my headphones, and that was my band. I mean, I had a full band playing with me, of course, and a drummer, so I would just go ahead and play what I was hearing and trying to mimic what Lars Ulrich and Dave Lombardo and Charlie Benante and them were doing on drums. And I kind of taught myself how to play by listening to what they were doing, So that's kind of how that got started before I started playing with other musicians. So it's just kind of weird how things happen sometimes. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So no lessons? Were you taking any lessons, or just
no? I took the first sessions I took were in 2004. I took a week. So in 2004, obviously a lot later in my life, with Bobby Jerzombeck. He played with Rob Halford.
Wow. You did lessons with him?
I did 2 sessions of, I think it were 2 afternoons with him in LA, because I actually had to go to LA for my physicist job. And I got in touch with him because someone told me, actually it was Jason Sukoff from Audio Hammer in Florida. When we worked with him, he's like, you got to check this guy out. And I heard it, and I was never the same again. So when I had to go to LA, I got in touch with him, and we met up, and super nice guy, super amazing. So that was kind of like the first time I had lessons, and he kind of opened up my brain on some new tools and stuff to do on the drum kit, which my drumming today would not have been the same without him. and I took a few sessions from a jazz drummer at one point in 2005, but that was it. The rest is self-taught. So, but amazing. I mean, a lot of credit to all the drummers that have influenced me, because I've listened to them. Like Dave Lombardo obviously influenced my playing a lot, and Gene Hoglan and that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool to say. They're all your teachers. Everybody
what's your
listening to?
Okay, so like, what's your top 10 most influential drummers? Just like 10? Spanning your whole life. Just
10, what's your top 50, dude?
Top 30. No, top 10.
Yeah, well,
I think 10's good. Because I want to hear a range. I can tell there's going to be a range. Okay, guys.
Okay. I'll start with the first 5, and then I can go off of that. So I would say today probably Dave Lombardo, Gene Hoglan, Bobby Jerzombek are really the top 3, I think, that have given. It's kind of like a mix of those top 3 guys, I would say, like in majority of how my playing is today. I mean, I've adapted with different ideas of different drummers and that, but I think those would be the 3. Then of course Sean Reinhardt has as well, and Lars Ulrich. When I was listening to Injustice for All, I mean, that came out, I was how old was I? I was 9 years old? No, I was 14 years old at the time, right? So 14 years old, and I hear Dave Lombardo, Lars Ulrich. Those were the bands that people were listening to. So I play along to Injustice for All. Not so much into the Metallica stuff from after that, but Lars was a little bit in there. So I would say those are kind of like the top guys that have really, help make me the drummer I am today, I guess, in a way there. Yeah.
So actually, a drummer's perspective, I would like to get into this. I mean, not really super get into it, but how much, shit people give Lars, usually from non-drummers. I mean, even drummers and stuff. I usually hear it's kind of like an inside joke. And I remember, like, as a kid, like, hearing that stuff and just the way he hit and everything, I was like, he's fucking just in the pocket, man. Like, I don't know,
dude.
But it's like it's like a Carrot Top. Like, everyone rips on Carrot Top, it's like, but he's kind of funny. He's like, it's like, he's like not a bad guy and he's funny. So it's like
the perfect phrase. All I have to say is that he is the perfect drummer for Metallica.
Yeah, it's like
exactly, and no one can refute that.
That's
totally.
That makes
that's all I have to say, dude.
Imagine
and who's the biggest band like ever, and dude, Metallica. I mean, I whatever the later stuff, whatever. But like, dude, those first 4 albums can just like, dude, you can just like go home forever. And
the songwriting,
that's
insane.
it. That's
Metal Church,
like,
dude.
You gave us that, and you can just like, dude, that's cool for it, dude.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to that time, right? Because if you listen to it now, I mean, metal has evolved and productions have evolved and all that a lot since then. But you go back to those years, and that was absolutely amazing, right? I mean, it was just crazy, right? So, I think, I guess my opinion of Lars, and this is a super taboo topic, right? Because I think totally. A lot of people say a lot of bad things about Lars, and a lot of people really like him. I think that, back in the kind of earlier part of his career, I've seen him play live. I've seen Metallica, I think, twice. I've seen the Injustice for All tour. And I mean, I've seen other shows from back then. And I think that he was a tighter drummer, back then than he is now. So I don't know if it's just something that comes with age or with practice. But I mean, you got to give it to the guy, though. Him and James Hetfield. I mean, I don't know a lot about Metallica, because there's like these crazy Metallica fans out there that really like the band. But from my understanding of how Metallica got to where they are today is in large due to James and Lars, right? So you could say what you want about them, but those are the main guys that have made Metallica who they are today and have pushed it to those limits, right? So the way that I see it is, I mean, yeah, Lars is not only a drummer. I mean, he's a businessman and he's an artist and helped get metal, and Metallica have helped metal in general. It's not just that they've made Metallica, who they are today. They've pushed the limits for metal, and more people have started getting into metal because of Metallica.
Definitely.
And have gone on to listening to other types of metal, and now are super metalheads, and they listen to all sorts of metal and helping metal, keep metal alive in that. So a lot of people say bad stuff about Lars, but I don't think metal would be where it is today without the big 4. you know, in
Oh, yeah.
in the 80s, you know. I mean, not just Metallica, but Megadeth has done much, Anthrax, you know, Slayer. I mean, it's amazing what they've done for metal these days.
And
you
also
know?
when you're in the limelight, people just, I mean, you're gonna have people
Yeah.
that don't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you, you know.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to answer your question a little more in depth because I do have another thought just on it real fast because you brought it up. So here's the thing is, and I remember when I first started taking drum lessons, okay, my favorite drummer was Neil Peart. I'll make this quick. And I was like, him and Danny Carey, right? Okay. And I went to my teacher and I was like, dude, I'm like obsessed with Neil Peart. Like I love Rush, like all the 70s shit. Like I was like obsessed with Hemispheres and all the songs. And he was like, oh, great, man. No, he's really good. But, you know, like he's kind of stiff, you know, like he's known as being kind of like a more stiff drummer as opposed to like all these other drummers. So he's like, because I was like, he's God, you know. I'm like, I walk in there like, dude, he's God, like he's the God, and he is God, or he is a God of drums, you know. But he was like, oh, but it's like the style of it was what he was talking about was like that's why people say like, oh, this drummer is better because they have more of this like kind of groovy or like, you know, whatever dynamic-y thing that they do like constantly, where he's just like you know, kind of like a real like more of a machine kind of thing. And I think that like goes between also if you compare like, so like say take Rush versus King Crimson or something, you're like, oh well, Bill Bruford from, you know, from Yes and stuff and early King Crimson, he's so much better because he grooves in a certain way. And it's like, is he? He's not. Like they're both amazing, they're both gods, like they're both so fucking badass and equally as good, 100%, you know,
but unique in their own
yeah
way.
exactly.
Yes.
It's not better
Yeah.
or worse. And the same, but the comparison I was going to make is kind of like between Megadeth and Metallica too, because Megadeth has the groove and they do this it's different kind of grooving that Metallica does, where Metallica is all like it's all super tight, you know.
Mhm.
And so like I think that Lars like and James is like all the down picking stuff like mixed with Lars's drumming is that sound, like that's the whole point, you know. So to say, oh, Megadeth's so much better because they groove in this, it's like it's a different feel, you know. So it's not who's better, like, or Lars isn't as good as, and you're talking about the heyday. Like, I mean, Lars in his heyday is like, we can talk about Lars now from these 90s kids growing up and being like, oh, you know, Crown King nothing and shit, like whatever. But it's like, dude, imagine seeing Lars on the Justice for All tour. Like, you did, dude, that's like fucking brutal. Like, I bet that was the sickest. I mean, I've watched the videos, man. It was sick. You know,
Yeah.
you
And
know, they're
actually,
still sick. It's just that was
yeah,
the heyday.
it's funny because that Injustice for All tour. So again, I was 14 years old, right? And I told my parents I wanted to go see Metallica, and my mother said, "You're not going to a heavy metal concert on your own. You're 14 years old. You go with one of your friends." And you know, I said, "I don't have any friends that are going to this, and I absolutely want to go." And my mother said, "Well, you're either going with a friend, not at all, or I'm going with you." I said, "All right, if you don't mind coming, let's go." So she came, and
Nice.
Queensryche was opening up for them, and I didn't really know Queensryche. You know, I didn't know what an opening band was at the time, right? This was like my first real concert. So the Queensryche guys come on, and I'm like, that's not, but I only had an album in Metallica. I only had Justice for All. So I'm looking at the Queensryche guys, and I'm like, what's the guy with the hat? Like, I don't, like, why? They're five, and I'm like confused of and I don't know any of the songs. And at one point, you know, they finish, and all the gear goes off stage. And I'm thinking, like, oh, and then there's stuff that I'm starting to recognize, and it's like, okay. And then Metallica came on. It's like, yes, that's who I wanted to see. So that was all excited. But yeah, my mother was there with me, and
what was her experience?
I think for her, she about 3/4 of the way through the concert, she just kind of looked at me and said, "Do you have enough?" And I was just happy that she came with me, you know. So I said, "Yeah, I understand. You came. Thank you. All right, let's go." And that was good. And I was very, very happy, you know. But
Totally.
my parents were always up for stuff like that, you know. When my parents were taking trips for work and they'd go, you know, away on a trip for a weekend or something, my mother would get back and be like, "Hey, we bought you this at a store downtown. Apparently, this is a big metal band that's in today." And I'd look at it and I'd go, "I don't know who they are, but yeah, shirt looks cool." One of those shirts was Slayer, Show No Mercy. I didn't know Slayer at the time, right? So they got me a Slayer shirt before I even knew the band. And Metallica Master of Puppets was, I think I got that before before I knew Metallica. And that was, you know, at an age where you want to be like, I'm not a little kid anymore, I'm a big kid, and because there was the word puppets on it, it's like, this is a joke. This is something for kids. I don't want to wear that shirt. So my mother said, hey, apparently it's this big metal band. So she took like a black marker and she put black marker on the of puppets. So it would just say master. So no one, would be like, oh, you got puppets on your shirt. You're a little boy, or stuff like that. So then I would wear the master of puppet shirt without the puppets. So people wouldn't, I was afraid people would tease me on it. So yeah, I mean, they were really cool with stuff like that. My parents, they helped out, and got involved. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. That's having parents that, may not get it, but respect that you get it.
Yeah.
Giving you rides to concerts and shit like that. That's awesome, dude.
Quick shout out to Nicole, by the way. She just rated us. Nicole, the shredder guitar player.
Oh, what up? Thanks,
sent
Nicole.
over. Yeah, it's awesome. Fuck yeah. Need to have her on. Have her and Justin on. Have like a
totally
kind of an Entheos part two. It's almost like another Entheos. Like
we should start
start
thinking about that though too. Like not just going specifically into like the Twitch channels and people on Twitch and starting to collab more with this side of it since we're newbies in this shit.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, dude, we got Raid, we got fucking like, was there ants? Like, what's going on? It's like, we're such boomers with this. But no, dude, I appreciate that a lot.
Speaking of Metallica, is that cool if I bring up?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I remember Dan Eggers, our old guitarist in ODS. He was like a couple years older than us, like 3 years older and stuff, And so for him, he was like, dude, I remember I saw the tour with Metallica and Guns N' Roses, like it was like 91 or 92.
I was at that one. Yeah.
You were, dude?
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I was like 9 or something. I was like, that's insane. Like, totally didn't go. But dude, that would have been like insane, dude.
That concert, the stadium tour, that was actually the concert in Montreal where James Hetfield got burnt with pyro.
Oh, really?
And yeah, that was it. And that concert turned into this crazy thing. So we went to the show and Faith No More was opening up, right? So it was Faith No More. They were opening up, and not even Faith No More. They were great in that. And it was Metallica, and then it was Guns N' Roses. And I remember Metallica, went on, and they played for, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And at one point in Fade to Black, right, which is the ballad and all that, at the start, the pyro goes up, man, it's freaking crazy. Everyone's freaking out. Damn. And then, the pyro goes down and no one's on stage. And I just see Jason Newsted, the bassist, just kind of like get backstage really quick. And I thought, oh, we're not screaming loud enough. Like they're going to come out. It's going to be this, oh, let me hear you scream or something.
Oh, yeah.
And there's still no one on stage. And then we're waiting and we don't know what's going on. And we waited for about 10 minutes. And Lars came out and said, look, there's been a pyro accident. James got burnt with pyro, and we're waiting to hear from the paramedics and that. So just hang tight and we'll let you know what happens. So he goes backstage, and of course people are like, oh shit, what's going to happen? So he goes backstage. We wait for another 15 minutes, maybe. He comes back out. He's like, look, we're still waiting to hear back from it. From what's going on, what we need to do. Just hang tight and we'll be back. And then we waited for probably another maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then it's the 3 guys I'm saying 3, but I got 4. The 3 guys that come out from backstage, and James is not with them. And it's like, shit. Okay. Yep. So Lars takes the mic and he said, yeah, he's on his way to the hospital. We cannot continue the concert. We will be back for you. We will play for you. We will be back to Montreal. And we promise that.
Not to butt in real quick. Yeah. I literally watched that video today.
Oh, really?
I literally watched that today. Just like, remember that the spark or the flames going up, or not the flames, the pyro going up, and then all of a sudden you hear like his guitar sound like all the strings get like snapped off of it. It sounds like
you hear
it just
clang,
sounds
clang, like
it
stuff
sounds
like
super
that.
weird. And then all of a sudden like you just see like Lars like throw down his drumsticks, and then I didn't see the other 2 appearances, but I saw the one where they're like, James is on the way to the hospital. We'll make this up to you. Well, I literally watched this morning when I was at work. Like, it's crazy. You brought that up.
And what's really cool is they did make that promise. And so they went backstage, and then we're waiting for Guns N' Roses. And I wasn't really a Guns N' Roses fan, but, I thought, well, okay, I'm here and paid for the ticket, so I'll just watch it. And they played, I think, about 25 minutes. And then Axl Rose at one point said, F you, you'll get your money back, smacked the microphone on the stage and walked off.
Was it the Riots?
And people are like, then the riots started.
That's right. I've
like
heard. Yeah, I
fires
remember that. Yeah.
were set in the stadium, and cop cars flipped upside down, and freaking merch booths being raided. Man, we saw that and we're like, we need to get out of here like fast. I mean,
we need all the merch right now for free. I'm just kidding.
But the really cool thing is Metallica did come back several months later, and they played 2 sold-out nights at the Forum in Montreal. And what was really cool is the tickets were of course, this is several years ago, but nonetheless, they were $12.50. People had paid for the concert at the stadium. They didn't play for the entire time. They did 2 sold-out nights for $12.50. And 3 years before, they were headlining for the Injustice for All tour, and the tickets were $24.50 at the time, just to kind of give you an idea. So the $12.50 was about half price of 3 years before that, right? So it was made, so they really came back to play for the fans because they had not had the chance to finish the concert, and people had paid money, and that's how they treated the fans. I mean, it was really cool to see a band that big that was taking care of their fans that well. I mean, that was really impressive. And man, talk about Lars again. He came to the mic and he made a promise, and I mean, of course, there's the whole Metallica team around it, but they made it happen. Which is really cool. So
aren't they the only act to play on all 7 continents or some shit like that?
Yeah, something like that. I've heard. Yeah,
they did like Antarctica or something, right?
Yeah, that's wild, dude.
That's a big D move.
Metal, dude.
It's like, all right, we're gonna play on all continents, play in the ice. Just like there'll be like 9 people there, and one of them will die. That's awesome. I mean, Lars also too. I mean, I actually have, looking back in retrospect, obviously the Napster thing, he took a hit a little bit, obviously.
Yeah, that's one thing, and then the documentary too.
Well, the thing is, though, I mean, the Napster thing, I remember seeing interviews with other people and stuff, other like big artists and stuff, and they were on fucking Team Lars. They were like, Team Lars, this is, of course, we're getting ripped off. We need to and like, Lars stood up and saw everyone saw the instant hate, and everyone's just like, okay, well, no, you can have you can download our stuff for free, whatever. Because Lars jumped out there, was like, yeah, I'm gonna like all these, like, even like from hip hop to rock to metal and stuff. They were all just like, fuck yeah, dude, keep the strong fight, man. This is fucked up. And then once Lars stood up and did it, like, everyone was like, no, I don't know that guy. It's all good. And they just like totally bailed on him. And I was like,
yeah, really, wow.
Yeah, I was like really just kind of messed up about like how he was doing the fight for them, and then people are doing these like mass Metallica CD burnings, and it was like turning into this like humongous thing, and then he took such a huge hit for that, but it wasn't like everyone was on his side. He just spoke up.
A weird reaction though, to like burn his shit because he's like, I don't want people stealing it.
It's hard for me to like even put myself in that perspective now with Spotify and YouTube and stuff. Like it's
like
really
it's like he was King Nothing or something.
yeah. It's wear your crown. But no, like literally, like back then, I mean, it was I don't know. It was such a new thing, and the people didn't understand any kind of ramifications for the music industry and stuff. They didn't understand what that meant. They were like, oh, I can get this music. I want to listen to your music, and you're gonna sue me or something for listening to your music. Is kind of how people took it, and they're like, you're already rich. Like, why you need to do this anymore? And but he basically just he slowly was like, shit, like after that all that stuff hit. But yeah, just
was Napster a paid thing or free?
No, it was free. It was all free. It was like a brand new. It was just file sharing and stuff. There was a bunch of other services, but they were the popular one that everyone could go download, and you can download your viruses wherever you wanted to download them, because that's basically like a lot of those files were like, oh, dude, it's fucking masterofpuppets.exe.
Speaking of the 90s, did you guys enjoy the Super Bowl halftime show there?
Oh, I actually did.
That was
dude,
a throwback.
It was so good, dude. That was so great.
But it's funny because they were all facing one way the whole time, so whoever was sitting on the other side of the stadium was just seeing like everybody's back of their heads and butts.
Yeah, I did. Yep. I didn't watch it, but I saw the video afterwards, and when they showed the first layer when they were playing in the living room, I thought like,
yeah,
there's 3 walls, so anyone that is not facing them in front are not seeing anything that's going on.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of unfortunate.
They paid for the cheap seats, apparently.
Yeah.
They probably set up. They probably set up
5,000.
some kind of screen for people to see on that side of what was going on. Because
like you can watch it on your phone live.
yeah. Scan this QR code. You can watch it on your phone. Yeah, no, it was definitely. I mean, also too, like I'm really good at telling lip syncing, and there was a lot of lip syncing with that too. I was like,
what are you talking about? Jill,
I was like, nowadays, I
Jill
mean, I
didn't
was like,
say that. That's not.
If you're gonna do it now, I mean, it's like I don't know. It's easy to see it now. I don't know. For me, I can.
Eminem definitely seemed like
dude, Eminem's triggers were for sure.
He was missing lines. There was like times where the mic wasn't even at his mouth, and you'd hear him.
Yeah. He'd just feel he like pull it back, but there's a slow voice.
That drummer, dude, that shit was quantized, man.
Well, actually, if you look on, at least I don't know if there was only one drum kit, but the drum kit had no mics, no cables. There was nothing on that.
He's all playing. It's like, dude, that guy's. No, I was at a party actually, well, a little small party, and we were just hanging out, and dude, fucking like there was like the show was going on, and there was this girl there, and she was like, "Oh my god, it sounds so good. That drummer's so good. Like, oh my god, I can't believe how good it sounds." And I was just like, okay, yeah, never mind. I didn't want to say anything. I was just like,
it was like that one time when there was like a Red Hot Chili Peppers thing, and then Flea just comes out, and everyone's like, "Yeah," and he's just not plugged in. And I was just like, and everyone's like, "What? It's Flea? Fuck yeah!" And I'm like, "Dude, where's the cable? There's no wireless. It's like an empty port."
Yeah,
there's such good sound out there.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the part of the reason for that is that, I mean, they have like a football game, right? And these are like massive stadiums, and it's a technological challenge to get all the production to work well and have the good speaker systems and having everything mixed. So I'm wondering if that's basically like you played the Super Bowl. It is what it is, and hopefully there's not too much hate from, what we're talking about on the chat or whatever. But, I'm wondering if that is possibly the management that just says like,
I would say
you either do it or you don't, and
I mean, also too, there's like I saw Lady Gaga's, and she was totally live. Like you can hear the mic noise, you can hear everything. She's running around the whole time. And like, I think it's just like you said, management. It's coming down to management. Like, do you guys want the opportunity or the chance of having something go wrong? Like, do you want that chance, or do you want it to sound perfect? Like, you have two options. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with the live.
I bet you that the live mic isn't even live though. Think about that,
dude. Killer.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it, dude.
Well, they might go in. I mean, one thing is like
what if she's lip syncing to the live fucking.
No. That's what I'm saying. They could go into the studio or do something like.
Dude.
They could do like a live
secrets. You know, it doesn't have secrets. Is Freddie Mercury, dude.
Well, Freddie Mercury.
That was all lip syncing.
Freddie Mercury is
Queen. He's
fallen
like
angel.
He's literally the quintessential front man, dude. When you watch that,
he never did the Super Bowl, though.
I've never met Freddie Mercury, but I love that guy.
Dude, he's never done the Super Bowl either.
What is that? What's that Blu-ray called that you had? That you showed me.
Dude, any of them, dude.
You had one that where
you
I was
just watch
like,
any live Queen
he's
performance
dancing,
ever.
He's singing, he's playing piano, he's fucking doing everything.
Is there like a bad Queen Freddie Mercury fuck?
There's like one time where he's like, he's like, or something,
All right,
let's talk about Freddie Mercury here.
Let's get the machetes out and get out of the weeds a little bit. Fucking,
yeah, just hack our way out of these.
Shot back into fucking.
Yeah. All right, back to the
good discussion though.
I think
that was good. That was good. I like that.
Yes, definitely. I think we were still in high school, dude. Did we even talk about? Was there Quo Vadis bands that you were?
Yeah. There was some friends in my class in high school actually that we were called Dead Stock, and that was like metal. That I mean, of course, the one of the guitarists was really into Megadeth and Annihilator. Another of the guitarists was really into like Obituary and stuff like that. Of course, I was into Slayer a lot. And the bassist was obviously in Overkill, right? Because of D.D. Verney in that. So it's like everyone had their own instrument hero in that, and we played together for I think probably about 2.5 years. And when we graduated from high school, we went to different schools in that, and we tried to kind of maintain the band. And we're still friends to this day. Actually, we still have chat going on with the whole group in that. So they're really cool guys. But the being at different schools and with all the work and stuff like that, they started being more into, at least the guitarist at the time, started kind of more going towards funk music, and he was listening more to like kind of lighter music than metal. And for me, I mean, Slayer, Dave Lombardo, that was like my thing right back then. So the kind of lighter music I wasn't so much into, but we did record a song, and it was called This Ain't Club Med, and it was a funk song. It was like a mix between like rap and funk. Nice. And it's actually pretty neat. And we did that song for for fun and self-funded and everything. But because it wasn't really the style of music I wanted to play, it kind of drifted off a little bit. It didn't work out so much. That was in grade 12, and then that's when the Quo Vadis stuff started.
Okay.
In Quebec, the way the schooling system works is grade 12 and 13. It's like a pre-university. It's not high school and it's not university. It's just kind of like they call it CEGEP. It's like a college or something like that. So anyways, we start, and I remember there was a guy in one of my classes. He had like Megadeth shirt or just Slayer shirt, stuff like that. And I'm here at this new school looking for people that want to play metal, and I don't know anyone that's liking metal, right? I mean, people listening to pop music and all these other things, and I just wanted to play metal. Totally. So I talked to the guy, and the guy already had a band, and he's like, we already have a drummer. And I was like, I'd just really like to jam, because it had been maybe a year that I hadn't played with a metal band, because the other guys were more going funk, and I just wanted to play with some guys. And at one point, that guy that I was talking to once in a while, like, hey, you still have your drummer? Yeah, you do. Oh, okay, all right, well, crap, I'll ask him in another 2 months or something. He was friends with Ari, who was one of the guitarists that ended up being in Quo Vadis and all that, but at the time Quo Vadis didn't exist. So he's talking to Ari, and Ari's told me the story like years after, that the guy's like, this drummer, you got to get him off my back. He keeps bugging me every X amount of weeks saying, hey, do you want to jam? Do you want to do something? And, Ari's like, all right, well, he sounds like a pain in the butt. So like, yeah, whatever, so, and then a few months later, it'd be like, hey, you want to jam? I'm just like, I just want to play, And at one point, I did end up speaking to Ari, because Ari always had him. It was like Megadeth. Everything was Megadeth, right? And Carcass, actually. And we got in touch, and I remember Bart and I and Ari were going to the same place, the same school in sciences and that. And I remember at one point that school, you could kind of like borrow from the music department, like a guitar at your lunchtime or something like that. And I remember Bart sitting down on the stairs with a classical guitar playing Slayer, and I was like, oh, he's playing Slayer. Oh, cool. And, he had his long hair, and he was playing, and his face was like, like really, playing. And I thought like, oh, wow. All right. So at one point I'm talking to Ari, and ended up talking to Bart. We were like, it wasn't like the three of us talking. It was kind of a little bit separated, because nothing had happened yet or anything. And, I said, oh, it'd be really cool if we could jam together. And, they said, so again, this story I learned from Ari and Bart like quite a while later, right? So I just wanted to jam with them. And they said, well, what can you play on drums? And they said, well, they asked me that. So I said, well, I can play Slayer, I can play Metallica, I can play Anthrax, I can, so I just named off a whole bunch of bands. And they're like, okay. All right, well, we'll see. Nothing really came out of it. And what I found out many months or possibly even years later is that they were auditioning drummers at the time, and there were drummers that was telling them, yeah, I can play Slayer, Metallica, like all these things. And they get to the practice space, and the drummer could not play well. And it was just, not really good. And here I am telling them the same thing that every other drummer has been telling them. Yeah, I can play Slayer, I can play Anthrax and all that. So at one point they're like, okay, then maybe we do have a rehearsal with them. So the night that they came over, they almost canceled, because Bart was telling Ari, I don't want to deal with a freaking other drummer that says he can play and he can't play. And then we have to tell him, no, it's not working out. Just leave us alone. And they almost canceled. They almost really canceled. But, I'm pretty sure it was Bart that was one, and there was Ari. I can't remember, but anyway, one of the two was saying that, and the other one said, well, let's just try it. And look, worst case, we'll lose an hour and that's it. And we'll just have to deal with the repercussions after of telling them, no, leave us alone, whatever. So they show up. And of course, they show up. They're super quiet. They're tense because they don't want to deal with having to tell me later in not these words, but in nicer words than you suck, leave us alone. We don't want to see you again. So they're all like super quiet. They're all in their zone and no one's really talking. And here I am excited, like, all right, I got some guitars to play with. This is going to be so cool. Yeah. And they plug in, they put on power on their amps. And because, my drums was at my parents', right? So they're coming over to my parents' house, right? Mm-hmm. So they, plug in their amps and they're just not very happy to be there and just kind of like, blah, mm-hmm. And that's all. And then they're like, so what do you want to play? And I said, well, you said you know this and you know that and you know that. You want to play a Slayer song? So I'm like, okay. Starts playing a Slayer song on guitar. And of course, for me, I know Slayer like crazy, right? So I'm like, oh, gosh. Mm-hmm. And as they're playing, they both look at each other. They look at me. And then the freaking smiles goes on their face. And then we're jamming. And everyone all of a sudden is smiling and happy. And then that completely changed everything.
Wow.
Absolutely that's everything. Cool. And they almost canceled and just didn't want to have to put up with anything. And look at what happened with Quo Vadis. If they would have canceled, there would be, well, I mean, they would have probably gone on to do other bands and myself, as well. But if they would have canceled, it would not have been what, Quo Vadis ended up turning into, with the years. So that was the first Quo Vadis practice that probably was in the winter of '93.
Okay. I was going to ask. So, yeah. Nice.
So were they like, what are you doing tomorrow, dude?
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Gosh, this is so cool. What do we do?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, so they're like a date you're way too excited about. So dude, what were you like playing? Like what kind of kit back then were you doing? Just like a single kick drum or like two kick drums? What kind of pedals were you using? Just because you were playing fast kicks. That's the thing. You have like an insanely rad style, like you're, as they say, like real tasty on the top, like your hands are great, as Chasen said. I like his quote on that. Shout out to Chasen. But dude, but your feet are like insane, and you've always had insane feet. And we talked about that first album, Nothing, from '96, where your feet were unedited and they sound like edited almost. It's fucked up.
That video we recently watched again, On the Shores of Ithaca.
I mean,
he's fucking on point that whole fucking song, dude.
96 is early, bro. That's like Sandoval shit. Like you're like insane, like in Derek Roddy, and like I've always loved Quo Vadis, but like it's just like it's crazy to think how you that's so. How did you get that sound? Like what, like in that first jam, like in those early times, like what was your kit like? Like what kind of pedals were you using to do all that?
So when I bought my first drum kit, I was already like into the Dave Lombardo Slayer, and and of course all of them had 2 bass drums, 4 or 5 toms, a floor tom or 2, and these cymbals. And of course, I'm just starting out. And remember, my parents said, "You want a drum kit, you buy it with your own money."
Yep.
How do you, as a 14-year-old, boy that is in school and trying to work to get money for this drum kit? I found a used drum kit that was in the newspaper, of course, because you go back to the year, right? There's I don't know if there was internet back then or whatever, but it certainly wasn't what it is today. Yeah. So you're looking in the newspaper, in the classifieds or whatever, and I just made some calls. And it's funny because I think the first, or at most the second drum kit that I went to check out with my parents was the one that I ended up buying. And I remember it had 4 toms, 1 bass drum, a snare, 1 floor, 2 crashes, and a hi-hat and a snare. So I basically had 4 toms, but 1 bass drum. That's what it was. And the guy was asking $500 for it. It was a Maxwin, a dark red Maxwin. And I still have the 10-inch, every drum kit that I've owned in my life, I've always kept the 10-inch tom. So I still have that one here, nice. With me. But anyways, so I didn't have a double bass, the 2 bass drums. And back then the double pedals didn't exist, right? So and of course, back then there wasn't as much double bass drumming as there is now. So I would play without the double bass drum. And of course, because I'm learning, I'm learning the kit at that point, right? So I'm not like, oh yeah, I'll buy a double pedal at the music store. They didn't exist, right? So you're just kind of learning. And before I got the second bass drum, because I've always had two bass drums, I've never played a double pedal. A few months before I bought the second bass drum used to practice double bass drumming, if you want to call it double bass drumming, I had a foot on the bass drum pedal and a foot on the hi-hat pedal. And I would kind of do this to get some practice of the motion, but wasn't doing it much because it's just not the right feel and the right sound in that. But anyways, yeah. So eventually I got a second, bass drum and started, and that was when I was with the high school band, right? That kind of started metal, but kind of went funk. So I was doing a little bit of double bass then, but it's really with Quo Vadis that it kind of started. And Quo Vadis started as a cover band, right? We were a Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, kind of Anthrax cover band. That's how the band started. Our first shows were covers. We may have had one or two originals, maybe a few shows later, but the first shows started off like that.
So
that's what we did.
Was your house the rehearsal spot after that?
Yeah. My house was the rehearsal space until probably the kind of day and tonight times that we did a few years at Ari's parents. And after that, once we got a little bit later than that, then there was the rehearsal space that we were paying every month and stuff like that. So yeah, but at that time it was my parents' house. Yeah. So a lot of patience on their part to hear, some people with loud amps and drums that were loud. So yeah.
But they were probably, as parents, they're just like, hey, they're here safe.
Yep.
In this space, making things and having fun. We know where they're at. That's probably, they're like, oh, we'll just turn the TV up really loud on the other side.
We'll
of the
deal
house.
with the noise for the
Yeah, you put the TV louder, basically.
Exactly.
Then maybe after an hour and a half, it's like, Yanic, I think it's time for your friends to go.
Yeah. Exactly.
We've endured enough for the evening.
When we used to jam at my place in high school, and we actually started ODS around that time. We were jamming, and my parents got into riding motorcycles, so they would leave and it'd be like, all right, so they're going for a ride. We're jamming Sunday. You guys riding? Yeah, we're going for a ride. It's like, all right. So it's like we're gonna jam at 11 o'clock Sunday. That's like, and then we hear the Harleys right away, and we're like, And then my sister would she was like a teenager or whatever, and so it was like she got sick of being around the house as we were jamming, so she started riding the motorcycles with the parents just to
because she didn't want to be there when you guys were jamming. Is that it? Or
yeah, totally.
It's like right before they left, you're just all playing fucking classic rock hits. You're like, yeah, dude, let's play some fucking Skinner, dude. And then they take off. It's just like, it's like,
no, but it's funny having your parents that come up and watch you play death metal in front. And then my mom had her ears plugged and she's trying to understand what's going on. She's just like, I don't get it, but okay,
I'm glad you like it, honey.
I can tell you're very fast. Your hands are going very fast. You guys are very fast. That's all I can say. It's just very fast.
It's funny that our parents were the first people to kind of give us that pushback a little bit, okay, well, it sounds cool, but they were the first one to actually do that. And then after you start showing it to your friends or other friends that are into metal and stuff, they're just like, okay, well, the vocals I'm just not really into, but they say the kind of the same thing. I mean, my dad was the same one, just saying okay, well, yeah, the music's cool, but
imagine being the vocalist. So you're like, here's my band, and they're like,
and then you meeting my dad. My dad's like, I fucking love Anthony, dude. Anthony's amazing.
And I think one of the differences is probably some of the people that have kids nowadays grew up with death metal, so they're used to the screaming and the growls and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
but
normal.
For me, growing up in the 80s, my parents didn't grow up with that, right? I mean, that wasn't the case, right? So this is completely alien to them, right? So that was, I don't know what they were thinking, oh gosh, is this a phase or this crazy thing that they're going through? I don't know. Whereas these days, parents are just yeah, I was listening to that too at your age and whatever. So yeah, I don't know, but
totally, it's my dad immediately saw the me having a Marilyn Manson CD and was like, nope. He's all, you could do all the yelling stuff, but not this. He was like, the Marilyn Manson thing, touched. He was touched him in a certain way. Where he was like, no, I'm not putting up with this.
It hit a nerve, yeah.
Yeah, it's but you can do all the yelling stuff now. It's that made the yelling kind of because Marilyn Manson was popular and he got to see like on the news what the fuck he was doing. You know what I mean? It was like he got to see like he went to the award show and then showed his butt and then like ripped a bunch. You know, it's like my dad's just like, all right, dude, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'll do the yelling stuff. I'll take the yelling for a 300 Alex Trebek.
Was it like assless chaps or something that he was wearing?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that definitely like softened the blow for him though. Just like seeing that, he's like, okay,
what
well,
up? My cousin Eric's in the chat, dude. He's got a question. He says, "Are there any other instruments you play besides drums?" What up, Eric?
Oh, hey, Eric. Okay, well,
I
thanks
clicked
for the question. I guess that was addressed to me, right? I guess.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
I really was just like his family, so I was just shoehorning him in.
The acoustic guitar, I kind of got back into it a little bit, and it's funny because with the studio here at Wave Transform, there's a band that came in at one point, and the guitars, he was playing acoustic guitar, and he was having trouble kind of, playing a good rhythm track, like a really kind of good, solid, good timing in that. And for me, I don't play enough to be able to do the bar chords, I think you call them there, where your finger. Yeah. So but anything that isn't bar chords, I can do rhythm acoustic guitar like pretty well, like the timing and the playing in that. And the second guitarist tried. He said, "Well, let me try it." So he tried it, and he had trouble. Then the bassist tried, and he couldn't do it. And the singer tried, and he couldn't do it. And I said, "What chords are you doing?" And he said, C, D, G, and E.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, none of those are bar chords. I said, "Do you mind if I try?" And I took the guitar and I played, and they said, "Can you record the acoustic guitar for us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I, went and played the acoustic guitar on their album, but it's really not much, like I have not played in a long time, but to be able to get by if someone is having trouble, and if they're very, very easy chords, then I could play acoustic guitar decently. But as soon as it gets into leads, any of the traveling stuff is nowhere. I wouldn't even call myself an early beginner. It would be an absolute 0 on 10, and anything with bar chords sounds awful. So it's got to be really easy.
I'm jealous. I'm actually the stories you guys are telling. I'm really actually jealous because I remember my dad did the whole. I remember the walk. It was a walk to a grocery store. We're in the parking lot, and my dad's like, "Hey, so do you want to start like playing an instrument or something?" It's like I'm probably 13 or 14, maybe a little younger or older. I don't know, but I was like, "Yeah, I want to play the drums." He's like, "Well, anything else besides the drums?" Because like we had no room for it, We had like, he had just purchased a condo in Santa Cruz, which is like we're all like really squished in together, a little squished in together, and we're basically like, we got neighbors to deal with and stuff. And my dad was like, "Well, it's like basically the nightmare instrument." I said first, and my dad's just like, "Well, is there anything else besides that?" Because my dad was a bass player, so he was like hoping I was going to be like, "Yeah, dude, bass. Can we do bass?" Like he was hoping I would just like drop I want to be like my dad. And I think that's what he was like that was the crossing the fingers, and that was like drums. And he's all, "Nah, dude, like you can't you're not doing that."
Which is like, I mean, in reality, if you thought about it, he could have had a rhythm section right there, dude. If you started playing drums.
Well, I mean, if electric drums
being in a condo,
prevalent,
like, dude, it's so funny that you're saying this because Trevor asked me, he was like, "Can I get a drum set?"
Well, now you can get an electric. You can get an electric drum set with the headphones, and that's like probably the quietest instrument.
Yeah, dude, they got those
now.
Alesis ones for like 400 and something bucks.
Yeah, it's like, and that's the quietest one they can have. It's like quieter than guitar, quieter than bass. It's like if you have the headphones on and it's just an E-kit or something like. Like that wasn't like those were like $9 million when I was a kid. That was like that was like
you just go to Guitar Center just to sit down and play with one because you could never afford one.
Yeah,
no, totally. Oh yeah, they were just like the Lexus of drums. It's like, dude, they're fucking It's like cell phones were just like you were like bricks, and like drums were like that were electronic were like $10,000.
And you always felt like Garth from Wayne's World, dude. You just like want to rock out like he did in the movie.
Oh, totally. That's what I wanted.
That was awesome.
Yeah, totally, definitely. That was the main. I mean, that was what I wanted to do, and I still like. I actually am now thinking about like getting like some, I don't know, spending $500 or $600 on like some sort of E-kit or something, or I don't know if you can call it an E-kit, but drum kit, electronic drum kit, to just kind of see what happens, because you put me behind a drum set right now, it's like And it's usually when I'm behind a drum set right now, it's like 5 people watching too. So I'm like, I don't get a chance to like just like hit stuff and just be like organic with it. Everyone's just like it's like Casey gets off the drums after doing like 280 beats per minute, like fucking like perfect double bass and like the gnarliest rolls I've ever heard.
What if Joel just starts shredding the drums, dude? That'd be sick.
I mean, well, you look at
Just
stories like James King from Origin, like, you know,
Yeah.
like he literally started playing for like a year or two and then recorded for Origin. He was like a guitar player. And he's like, yeah, it just got into it and just went into Origin.
No,
Like,
but I've seen you got the
Wow.
hand twitch. You can do like a fast.
yeah, I got
blast.
the Twitch, I got the things, you know, like
You
I
gotta-
just didn't have.
Have you heard of is it Riccardo Merlini? Have you heard of that guy? Yanic?
No.
Check that dude out. He's like Italian dude, I think. And he's this crazy drummer. Like
Really,
like,
with that name? Come on.
I know, yeah.
He's
Oh,
But he's
fuck
like
out,
the
but you don't-
fastest, like super, like he's like his hand, like he can do like these 300 plus beats, like blast beats, like super fast. But it's like he's not just a metal guy. Like he like does these clinics and stuff. But yeah, he's insane.
That's like a
Wow.
natural
He's-
twitch
no,
to a
he's
lot of
like-
that stuff when
I
you
could
go
see you
that
doing
fast.
that, Joel. You could like learn his technique. I think I could see you because I've seen you do that, like the fast twitch.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, I like have like Naveen,
Be
like
one of
we
those
have like
guys. Yeah.
And,
Joel's
like,
gonna be
oh,
fucking looking at drum sets
Yeah.
tonight, dude. After
No, I
You
did.
guys
I did
are
like 2 nights
drunk,
ago. I was
drunk
looking at it.
shopping.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was like I've like brought drummers down like on tour and stuff. I've been like that little Twitch thing. I can like hit like I can Twitch super
Yeah.
fast.
Oh yeah,
Now,
your
like,
double finger on the table, dude.
Yeah,
The
no, like
gravity
have like
blast,
I've had
fucking-
Naveen and like I've had a bunch of people like try to do it with me, and they're like, I'm like way faster than them. I'm like, what
Nah, I
the
know.
fuck, Dad?
It's in
Fuck,
you.
Dad?
Yeah, it's in you. It's in you. Yeah.
No, he was stoked. He's like, oh, dude, I get to pay $150 for a fucking starter guitar set, and instead of like a
Yeah.
humongous drum kit that's gonna ruin my life, like you know.
Yeah.
I know.
So
But, yeah,
I want
wanted
to take
to
it
get
back
you into
when you
something.
guys are ready.
never.
Are you guys ready?
What do you guys think about Lars?
I want no, not that far back. I want to ask you, Yanic, about your drum recording on that first full length album, which is
Wait,
Forever.
before
right?
that, I want to know. So you were talking about the hi hat one single pedal thing. So
Oh,
you were doing that
okay.
for your tryout for Quo Vadis, and then when did you get the double kicks?
No, the double kicks I think I got a year before I started playing with Quo Vadis. So
Okay.
by then I had some practice. It wasn't as good as what it is, what it ended up being with time.
Mhm.
But it wasn't bad, I mean, I could, by then I'd been playing for 2.5 years, I think. And playing, I think
Carey.
maybe a year with the second bass drum. So it started kind of getting into it enough to get the guys to really kind of look at each other and smile on the first Quo Vadis, rehearsal that we had when Bart and Ari were not very happy of being there and they were thinking of canceling. And then when we played, they all looked at each other and were like, oh my gosh, so it was enough to get them really kind of hyped up, so yeah.
Nice. All right, so now we can get into what Casey was going for.
Yeah. So what was your question
Oh, about your drums. Yeah. So like basically like it's just
on Forever?
so how you recorded, like, because it was in you must have recorded in like 95 if it was
it
released
was
in
either
96.
95 or 96. I think it was possibly
early.
96 because we were
Early,
recording
yeah.
during the summer. It was during summer months that we were recording, and I think that got released. Actually, you know what? It may have gotten released in the early 1996. It's possible. So it may have taken that long, but I remember recording drums that summer. And
Yeah.
of course, things, with guitars and vocals taking a little bit longer and mixing. So yeah, it's possible it was in the summer of 95 or anyways, 96, one of the two. But yeah, around that time. Yeah. Mhm.
So how did you record that? Like, were you using triggers and stuff, or like at that time? Yeah, because that was kind of early. People were starting to do that and everything.
Yeah. So Forever had triggers on the bass drums, and I remember
cool,
Pierre
yeah.
Miard, who was the sound engineer at the time. I was always interested in studio stuff, but I had no idea what triggers were at the time. And he said, these little two things here are
Yeah.
really cool. They're going to make your bass drum sound amazing.
Wow.
And it's kind of
What
funny
kind of
because
triggers were they?
at the time, I think they were either Yamaha triggers or Alesis. I can't remember, but it was the
Okay.
triggers that you it was like a little capsule, probably the size of like a guitar pick or something like
the
that.
little, yeah.
And it had the kind of sticky, the double-sided tape, and you
Sure.
used to stick it on the bass drum skin on the inside of the bass drum,
Yeah.
halfway between the center and the edge.
It's the old school.
And that's how it is. And you'd get double trigs, and
yeah.
sometimes it wouldn't trig, so stuff like that. But again, that's the cool thing with the two bass drums, right? Is that you have half as many hit on each skin.
It's easier
so it kind of helps with that. Sure. But I remember the first time I heard it, I didn't really like it, because all of the Slayer albums and Anthrax that I was listening to didn't have that ticky kind of tone to it, and I wasn't really sure I liked it. But then when I started hearing the definition, then I thought, oh, that's really cool, because you can really hear the, the different the hits. You can hear it really well, even at high speeds. It wasn't just kind of boomy and no detail and just a lot of kind of rumble. I mean, there was some definition on those albums, but it's just with the triggers, you get so many more high frequencies and high mids that the detail really kind of cuts through and you can hear them really well. So that's when I started like, oh, okay, all right, I think this is pretty cool. All right, let's do it. So
I had triggers like in high school, so like in the late 90s, and I got Axis pedals like 97 or 8. I got like a pair like way back, and I was like, but yeah, man, that's like crazy though that you were like doing that back then. Like, I mean, it's like 96 or recording that 95. I mean, that's like around when Domination came out and shit, like in, Pierce from Within, and like, I don't know, was Domination 95? I can't remember, but it was like, that's like crazy, dude. You were like right at that time with, there wasn't like a lot of bands. I mean, people were doing triggers and stuff, but it was like, I don't know. It's like, it just sounds so like,
well, you also got to think about, you got to think about how difficult it is to get an independent band stuff from Canada down into the United States and circulated in the scenes down here enough to where before we finally get it, we got it a little bit later because Quo Vadis had to keep pushing out sick records for us to be forced to come across it.
It took our friend Josh to show us, and it was like, oh my god, they were like obsessed, and they like had all the albums and like watched the DVD all the time and stuff, and that was like early 2000s, like for us, like but yeah, it's so recording that, like it was just all natural drums and then like just triggers on the kicks and
it was just triggers on the kicks and no edits at all. Dude, that's exactly what it was.
People, if you don't know this album, Quo Vadis, Nothing from 1996, dude, that shit is slays, dude. Like so good. And like, and the guitars sound really good too. I'm like, damn, it sounds great. But I mean, of course, all your other stuff is amazing, and people are asking about, didn't you do it with Steve DiGiorgio? Of course, he was on, what's the one called again? I always get
the Quo Vadis album that he did.
Yeah. What was the one called?
That was Defined Imagination.
Yeah, Defined Imagination. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That one's sick. I mean,
how many tracks was it? One or more tracks on that album that he did?
On Defined,
he did the whole thing. Right?
Yeah. I mixed that up. I'm sorry, because we were talking about him featuring on something else. Sorry, I mixed it up.
He's featured like on albums that haven't even come out yet. He's like the most professional gnarly musician. He's like on so many things.
It's really amazing. I mean, but there's a reason for that, right? I mean, he is phenomenal.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
No, he's your new project too, of course.
There's one thing I'd like to comment about, since we were talking about triggers. Triggers are really misunderstood and criticized, really, technology. And it's funny because the last clinics I gave were in 2018, because of course after that COVID started and all that. And I know that triggers are a very criticized technology. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to incorporate the technology and the science of triggers into my clinic. And I'm going to give examples and have people come up on the drum kit and show what triggers do. And I will have an interface to record what the person, the attendee at the drum clinic that comes up on stage to show that this is not tricked, it's not anything, and they play, because I put triggers on the bass drums, and I said, okay, don't hit hard, and I'm recording the signal because I have Pro Tools on my laptop, and I have an HDMI cable on my laptop being projected on the big screen, and they are seeing a live recording of what is going on the stage during the clinic.
Yeah.
And I said, don't press on the bass drum pedal, don't press hard. And he presses a little bit hard, and nothing is coming up on the screen. Then I said, okay, go a little bit harder. Then he goes a little bit harder, and then there starts being a little signal. And then go a little bit harder. Oh, the signal's a little bit, higher velocity. And then the SPL is greater, and greater. And I said, this is a really misunderstood, piece of technology, because a lot of people think that, oh, the drummer's not really hitting for real. And that is not the triggers. That is the settings on the trigger module that does the sounds, that you can remove the velocity and you can make it either all or nothing. So if you don't hit hard and you hit super hard, it comes out at the same volume. But a lot of people think nowadays, and this is really due to bad information that's gone around for some people on the internet, that they think it's either all or nothing. It absolutely isn't that way.
So it's dynamic.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of levels of dynamics on that. And and I think it was kind of funny at that clinic where I had that person from the audience to come up. And all I did was I had my laptop and I pressed record and I tell them what to do. And it was on the screen and people could see it. And it's like, oh, wow. And then I brought up a few articles that, were interviews with Andy Sneap, who's one of the biggest metal producers nowadays. And he said, yeah, bass drum, he pretty much, sound replaces pretty much 100% the bass drums on the recordings. And the toms could be maybe 50-50 depending on the drummer and the snare also. And I just brought up a few articles where Andy Sneap was answering and giving that. And I think that people were just surprised of reading that. And it's just because, again, it's a very, I don't know if you call it a taboo topic or something like that, but it's a criticized technology. It's got its advantages and its disadvantages, but it's very misunderstood. I mean, what it is it's a piezoelectric element. So what a piezoelectric element is that if you apply greater pressure, you get more signal out of it. So what happens is if you have, like, say this is the bass drum skin right here, and you have the trigger that is clipped with the piezoelectric element that is hitting the skin, there's pressure on it. And what happens is when the drummer hits the drum skin, what happens is if you have the piezoelectric element here, and then the drummer hits the skin and the skin goes like this, basically what that does is the piezoelectric element sends a signal to the module, but all of that is a function of how hard the drummer hit the skin.
Interesting.
So the trigger captures the dynamics of the drummer's playing. Absolutely.
So you said piezo. You said piezo. So that's the same technology with the guitar, with the or I call it piezo, but the piezo pickups that they have to make it sound like an acoustic guitar is the same technology.
It's possible. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that, and but yeah, it's possible. Yeah,
it's basically something that, like, picks something up by like vibration, I think, as opposed to like
they'll put it like on the bridge of the guitar, like it's like little pickups at the bridge of the guitar, not on the pickups or anything. It's like where the the Floyd Roses or whatever.
Well, you can set a guitar tuner to piezo or mic.
Yeah, I didn't know piezo was the same technology. I didn't know that was used with drums based, because it definitely will like understand the dynamics.
Would you say it's sort of a wave transformation?
I'm not the physicist here, so
yeah, I got a story about that one later. But yeah. But it's kind of funny because the triggers, what happening is it's Pierre Rémillon, the sound engineer, that got me into that and forever, right? And what ended up happening is when we did Day and Tonight, he had gotten this new drum module that was like the thing at the time that people didn't even know about yet. And Charlie Benante from Anthrax, he was, because of the drummer of Anthrax, that's how Pierre got to know about it. And it was a D drum module. And at one point, Pierre's band Oblivion was opening up for Anthrax on a tour within Quebec or something like that for a festival. And he asked the sound engineer, how do you get Charlie Benante's drums sounding like that? And the sound engineer said, just wait a minute. He goes in the tour bus, he comes out and he says, this is the magic. And what it was the D drum module. And I don't know if you've seen any of the drum kits from Charlie Benante during that time, but he had triggers on the bass drum, the snare, all the toms, everything was triggered everywhere.
Okay.
And what that was is that, and you got to remember at the time for live also, we're not talking about albums here. We're talking about live, performances here, right? And what was happening is because everything was triggered, there is no bleeds. There's no bleed at all from the cymbals into the tom mics, right? And there's no like, oh, we were rushed for the sound check. It's not really a good, mix or whatever. Or man, the toms are the skins are in bad shape. The toms don't sound as good as they could and all that. So the D drum module, what they had was like, these are tones that are recorded in the studio with amazing drum kits, great tuning, new skins, good microphones, preamps and all that. And you had that in there. So what they did is they triggered the entire drum kit, and they may or may not have had that dynamics on or not. That I don't know, but the signal is clean. And I remember talking to Pierre and another sound engineer afterwards, Yanic, same name as mine, and he was the guitarist and also a sound engineer for Despised Icon and a whole bunch of other bands. Also, an amazing engineer. Both of those guys are amazing sound engineers, and he was like, "Man, triggers, yeah, they could sound really good live, but if you have technical problems with them, it's a freaking nightmare." And it's like, hey, shit, okay, so do I want to do this? So I'm kind of talking to a few people. And at one point we were looking at when Quo Vadis wasn't playing as big venues, it's like 4 toms, that's a lot of mics. And what we started looking at is, well, with the triggers, you can get a stereo out, which is 2 tracks, a left and a right, that has your whole tom mix for your 5 toms, your 4 toms on the floor. So it's like that'll take just 2 channels on the console. And the sound check might not be as critical in terms of like, oh, you got a buzz on your second tom because your skin's used. Can you put some gaffer tape on it with some Kleenex and, kind of stuff like that? It's like, oh, geez. And in Canadian winters, your drum kit is in a trailer in freaking like minus 25 Celsius on the way there. You take it out, it gets a thermal shock to like, room temperature. And then, you do your sound check. Opening bands play, room gets super hot, then it gets super hot and the skins that, you know what I mean? So it was kind of tricky, but we ended up using triggers at one point, and really they really worked out really well. And I was fine with it because I had the dynamic settings on, so it wasn't like, this sounds fake. I mean, it was sounding pretty good, so we just went along with it at the time. So
So real quick, minus 25 degrees Celsius is minus 13 Fahrenheit for you Americans out there. And I just went through the, I was like, is that like minus like 80 like Fahrenheit? Like, like I don't even, well, that's still really cold. It's still really fucking cold.
Still really cold. Never experienced that cold ever.
If I lived in if I was a guitar player or anything like in that like territory, I would just be like, dude, I'm doing fucking carbon fiber, everything. I'm not messing with wood at all. Like I'm not going to, the expanding and all this stuff with wood and like I don't know, but that's really cool to hear all the technology behind that, because I mean especially like there's even people talking about the piezo saddles and stuff in there, and it's like really like it's very cool technology to bring into drums, because as a non-drummer, I thought it was all or nothing. I thought it was if the hammer hits or the frequency hits, if it's like one of those clip-ons, that's just, it's going to be like, okay, pre-recorded sound. Maybe like change the sound up a little bit sonically, like with a lot of those double bass drum programs or whatever, or not double, just drummer programs that just have like, they're like have different sounds, but they're pretty much the same, but like they make it a little different. So like you can hear that it's like not just the same, it's basically dynamic. So you could put fake drums in there and people would be like, okay, well, that sounds good. It's not like the old school drum machine, But that's really cool to hear all that. I mean, there's not really a way, I don't think, if let's say you're playing like an arena or something, and I just saw a fucking Opeth, maybe 2 months ago, and just I was noticing the frequencies that how they were bouncing around it's a humongous theater. So the roof is probably, I don't know, like 50, 60 feet high. And then it's really deep too. So I was thinking to myself, you have to use triggers. And even with guitar stuff, I was like, the guitars were getting lost like in that, because it was so much bouncing going around that like the guitars were just turning into kind of, you know, for me.
Wall of noise type.
Exactly. And the drums sounded amazing. And I was like, you know, there's definitely like just the way the frequency travels probably has a lot to do with it. But something about like I was thinking to myself, like in those big venues with I mean also too a really good sound guide helps, but I was thinking just the way that the sound travels from the stage to the back of the room. Like there's and obviously up on, you know, hitting the fucking ceiling and stuff and coming down. Like there's got to be, I mean, to me, I was trying to think of like, you know, the $1 million invention. And I was like, there's got to be, the only way I could think of that it would work would be guitars would be like these section speakers every couple rows or something. That's like to make it so you could hear everything. Because I'm like, I'm deaf in one ear and I hear like a lot of like a white noise anyways. I have tinnitus really bad. But like,
oh, jeez.
Yeah, but as far as like hearing like, you know, sonically perfectly with guitars, like drums were nailed, bass I could hear perfectly, like vocals were, you know, probably second worst as far as like how it traveled. But just something, I feel like there's something there. There's like $1 million invention there with just like little strip speakers that go down every few aisles or something for guitars or something just to make it like bounce perfectly. And you being like a recording engineer, I mean, I want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so I think part of the problem sometimes is the acoustics in venues, right? I mean, this is not like an acoustically designed space like what you kind of see here, you know?
Yeah.
So you know, part of it sometimes is the room, part of it is the tone that is going into the microphones or into the board, and part of it is the sound engineer, you know? And I think that kind of all go, and a part of it is the musician too, right? Because I know for drums for live, if there's a lot of noise on stage and the drummer isn't hitting hard on the toms, the signal that is going to be given to the sound engineer might not allow him or her to do what the sound engineer would really wish to do, because it's just not good enough for them to be at their optimal you know, tone, you know? So you can have the same sound engineer and you give them, you know, a good musician that is very experienced in playing live and the other one not so much, and the band will sound different, will sound completely different, you know? And for drums, well, I'm obviously, I know that just because that's my instrument, right? So I studied that for a while. So drums for live, usually drummers choose thicker shells because they're louder. So when you have a thicker shell, the downside is you have less resonance, but it's louder and they're less sensitive typically. So what a lot of drummers do is in the studio, they'll have like a thinner shell, like a less plies or less thickness, you know, on the toms or stuff like that. But for live, you want to go to a little bit thicker to get that volume, and you got to hit hard on the drums, you know. Pierre, when we did Day and Tonight, actually, I always was interested in studio stuff, and I was there when he was working on the mix. And at one point I said, hey, can you bring up the volume of my toms? And he looked at me, and of course, Pierre and I had a good relationship. So this is going to sound like he was a little bit not nice, but he didn't mean it in a not nice way. It's just because we had a good, he goes, Yanic, you want to hear what's in your tom tracks? And I said, sure. So we soloed my tom tracks, and I said, what was that? He said, that's you hitting the toms. And I thought, oh, okay. All right. He goes, you know, when I tell drummers, you got to hit hard. You really have to hit hard. And there was only so much that he could do with the toms to get them to sound really good. And I'm not saying they sounded bad, but he would have been able to do more if I would have played better. And I think that was my eye opener that changed my drum playing for the rest of my life, actually, you know, from I think when we were mixing, that was in 1999, I think, when we were mixing that. And that was like the whole crap moment. And then I rehearsed a lot and was hitting hard on the toms and the snare. And by the time we recorded, you know, Define Imagination, it was Jim Morris that ended up mixing that. And he's like, man, your toms sound good in that. And that's because I had been practicing a long time, or really, you know, hitting super hard on the toms to really get a good tone out of the toms. And that's why the toms sound the way they sound. Well, first of all, because I mean, I hit harder and I was playing better, but also because Jim is an absolutely phenomenal sound engineer also. But it's like you have to have the combination of those two things. You need to have a good room which live venues, you don't always have that. You need to have a good engineer. You need to have good musicians, and the good musicians, that's required. You really need that.
Definitely. I mean, that's like going back to like the Mike Keane episode where we're talking about tone, and he's like, we're talking about pickups, and I'm getting like super specific on like woods and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like, it's like, turns out it's the secret, the trade secret, it's in your fucking hands. Like it's in it's like, that's the trade secret. It's like, you could buy some cheap, Squire Strat pickups, and it will sound good if your hands are good. Or you can get the, insane EMGs or whatever you need to get. And it just depends on your hands. And it's kind of like what you're saying with drums. It's like, it's just about how you play them, or you could trigger all the toms, like if you want to. With the dynamic
that actually
triggers.
happens. I think that happens a lot nowadays, because I think the trend in drumming since the 70s, you've seen that the cymbals were very high back then, much higher than the toms, but that's because you didn't have sound replacement at the time. So if you didn't have that distance, the cymbals would bleed into the toms.
Mike
right?
Mangini.
So and I think that's gone away with time, because you can get good tones by doing sound replacement now, right? So now you can get the cymbal right next to the tom, and you don't even have to hit hard on the tom. And if the sound engineer sound replaces it in the studio on the album, you hear like, oh wow, the drums sound crazy good. And if they were sound replaced, anything's gonna sound good and edited, but it still gets to back live. If you don't have that separation between the cymbals and the toms, and you're not hitting as good, your drum sound live will not sound as good as if you really lay into the toms and the snare and the bass drums, pretty well, and you have the separation of the cymbals being away from the toms, So I think that's gone away a bit because of sound replacement.
Yeah, definitely. Time, money too. It's like a lot of people are just, deciding to use the replacement, because it's, you don't have to sit like there forever and figure stuff out in the studio forever. You could just go boom, sounds good, let's move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And no, but you're absolutely right? I mean, if a band comes in and it's their first album and they say, oh, well, we want to get something really good, but, they don't want to, change snare skins 3 times throughout the album and spend all this time tuning. And same thing with the toms, right? If you say like, when I do a drum recording, I buy 3 to 4 sets of tom skins, and we change them after, and spend time tuning. And actually my Julie, the singer of Gone in April, she's the one that tunes my drums. I don't tune my drums because she plays violin. She's got the fretless instrument, so her intonation is really good. And so she tunes the drums, and she does live also. So when we're playing, it's like I set up the drum kit with people that help me out, and she goes around and checks the drum tuning and stuff like that. So, but a lot of the bands that come in for the first time, they don't want to spend an hour, 2 hours tuning the drums and then stop after 3 songs, put in new drum heads and spending time again, because that's a time and money, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, as far as like a non-drummer like me, and I mean it's probably people watching that are non-drummers, what does tuning the drums mean? Are you tuning to a note? Are you tuning to a scale? Are you tuning to
So yes. So yes, and yes. So, but that's in my case, right? I can say what I prefer, because there's, some people don't tune to specific notes. If the tom sounds good, then they leave it as is. When I played at a drum festival at one point, it was in 2007. There was a guy in Montreal that was the guy that tuned drums at drum festivals and he tuned it. And, a while after that drum festival, I got back in touch with him and started asking him a lot of questions. And what he had said is he likes tuning the drums to a major chord. And that was like, okay, that's interesting. And I'd heard of, other drum tuners in the past kind of doing the same thing, but maybe without really realizing it, but they were. There's I don't know what that song is, but like at the horse races, I think it's the horse races, that dun 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 dun, that thing. So they would tune the toms that way, right? So when Julie tunes the toms, so she tunes to a specific note. So if I hit 2 toms at the same time, there's basically, everything's in a major chord. So even if I'm doing a tom roll going down, I think it's like D, G, B. I can't remember off the top of my head. Actually, I have it on my phone. I should check. But everything's on a major chord for the toms, and then the snare is a note that does not conflict with harmonically with the frequencies with the toms, because what happens is if you ever heard someone hit a tom and the chains under the snare go shh like that, well, that's because there's frequencies in common, right, with the harmonics. So sometimes the sweet spot is about finding the right combination for what you like. That's why tuning is actually very complex. You need to have notes that you like, but that don't conflict with each other. And that's the big problem. And at one point when we were learning that entire process, I was asking questions to different drummers, and one of the guys said, oh yeah, if you get a lot of rattle, just stick a sock between the chains and the skin and put a lot of duct tape. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like the snare would sound like crap, but there's science behind it, and it's
so I'm trying to just wrap my dumb brain around this right now. And I'm thinking like, okay, so the bass drum would be like the low string.
I guess, yeah.
Because I'm trying to think of it as like, those would be the strings. You tune the strings like in a certain chord that you're talking about, like a G chord. You could tune a drum. Yep, Anthony Drunk alert. You could tune all your drums into like a chord that could be played on guitar. You're saying, and if it was all played at the same time, it would be
the thing that's a little bit tricky with drums is the harmonics are not integer multiples of the fundamental, right? So it's like, when you're on a guitar or any string instrument, for example, if you play the fundamental string, if you have your guitar, your bass, and you don't put your fingers on the neck, you just have it, just open for the fundamental, you pluck the string and you get the fundamental frequency, right? If you want to get the first harmonic, then that's twice the frequency. If you get the next harmonics, that's 3 times, then 4 times, then 5 times. So it's always like an integer multiple of the fundamental. With drums, that's not the case, and that's what's tricky. They are real numbers. So if you have the fundamental frequency, the next the first harmonic could be like 2.195 times the fundamental. And then the next frequency could be like 4.456 or something like that, because they're circular membranes, and the science behind that is completely different. So when you have a string, the trigonometry that, we all learned in high school and go, when are we ever going to use that? I don't need to know the stuff. Trigonometry.
I failed algebra my senior year. Yeah. So he said we all took. I didn't take any trigonometry, dude.
Yeah.
I know, Yanic's like, that astrophysics we took, like,
he has a PhD in physics, right?
I know. I was gonna lead into that, but
get into that eventually.
Well, we should probably mention it at this point. I mean,
but let him finish his thought.
It's so genius. Just keep going, please. Yes, keep going.
Well, okay. So the thing is, in geometry, non-geometry, and trigonometry. So for those that remember the sine wave, so you basically have a wave like this. So when you consider a sine wave that kind of goes like this, that's basically the equivalent of the string on a guitar, right? So you have one end of it and the other end of it, and when you pluck it and you don't have your finger on it, right?
Totally.
So and that's what it is on a string instrument. So you get the the harmonic. Well, basically, instead of having this, you end up having the full sine wave, which is this. And then when you get the third harmonic, on and on, right? So it's either twice the fundamental, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, something like that. But with drums, it's based off of they're actually called Bessel functions, Bessel. And because they are circular membranes, what happens is you have the fundamental, like say this is the drum skin right here. The fundamental is where you have the center of the skin that moves in and out. But then the harmonics, for example, they're in 2 dimensions. You can get 2 different types of modes. So you can have this side go down while this side goes up, and it goes like that. That's a harmonic, right?
Jeez.
Or you can have it in terms of the radius. So you can have the center going in and out, and you have a donut around it going in the opposite direction. Now that's a harmonic also, right? So one's a function of radius, the other one is a function of angle, and it gets very complex with drums. And that's where you get harmonics that are not integer multiples, and that's when it's tricky to tune without having too much interference or from one going onto the other, and you hit one part of the drum, or you hit one drum and you have another one vibrating next to it, and stuff like that can happen because of those harmonics.
My God. Actually, you explained it very well, because that's like, I mean, like, I understand, like, I know, Jesus, that's insane.
No,
like,
this
my brain
is exactly
like,
what I was expecting this to happen. To
This
me
episode
at least
kicks ass.
once.
I wish we could like, I wish we could pause this whole live thing and I could just sit there and just think about it for like 9 minutes and just like stare at the wall.
Casey,
Oh,
what was
man.
that? What was that one?
Well, there's
shit you
definitely
used
gonna
to
be a
show
clip
me?
about that part. That was
Oh,
fucking
Jesus,
dope.
man. That's
What's
I
that?
actually have stuff on my website with that.
Oh,
I
man.
can maybe send the link,
Dude,
but if
plug
you check
your-
on
plug your
yanicbercier.com, there's stuff.
Okay, I'll put a banner.
I fucked up and didn't ask him to plug this shit in the beginning too.
We'll plug it at the end.
fucking
again.
remember
I'm
that.
gonna put a banner up there, dude.
I think it's like Tech Talk or something on my website. I can check if it's still
Casey,
there,
what
'cause
was
it's
that?
been a while.
What was that video we used to trip out on with the sound waves and the sand and all that shit? What was it called?
cinematics.
Yeah.
Do you know about that? I'm sure you do. The like how like they put these sounds on it, and it like
The salt.
frequencies, and it like makes these like geometric patterns, like because of the sound waves. Like instantly, like the sand becomes like fractals and stuff.
Yeah. So talking about that, if you go to exactly that, if you go to my website and under media, if you click on Tech Talk, there's actually vibrational modes of circular membranes and GIFs that are animated that you can see them. And there's a few articles that are there that you can click on. So yeah, there's some information there that's really cool, and visuals with all of, like I was saying, that stuff like this and all these things and all. I mean, there's just there that are animated to see them, so it's actually really cool.
God, man,
amazing, dude.
That's probably the most mind-blowing episode I've ever had with that shit.
Yeah, I like hanging out with people that are smarter than me. It makes me feel like stuff.
Well, yeah, I try to think of myself as somewhat of a sponge. I don't know how much of that I'm going to actually take with me, but I now I have it recorded in a podcast, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my friend Brian, he got his degree in physics at UCSD like a few years back, and he's super smart guy. And he's like, he like makes video games, and he's like, does coding and develops stuff and everything, and he's just super smart. But man, like, you're next level, bro. Like, you're like, it's like, especially relating to drums, that it's like I've never heard anything like explained that way. Like that's so fucking fascinating.
So kind of like walking into what Casey was talking about earlier, like, so the legend that of all of us like watching Quo Vadis, the DVD and stuff like that, that was always like, because we were always watching you and watching the whole band just like be amazing, and we were just like, oh my god, this is fucking. We would just watch it like almost daily. We were like obsessed with it. And then the story was it basically came up with that. It's like, oh, he left because he's like a physicist or something, and had to quit. He had to quit the band because he's so fucking smart that he had to like go pursue his career because he's like a genius or something, and like that's what he had to do. So can you elaborate on like that whole story? I know we probably skipped over some stuff, but whatever, because this is what it's been on my mind the whole time since we started this whole thing. So like it's like so elaborate on that, because like just I want to know like the story of, I mean, Quo Vadis and you doing the being obviously a genius. Like, I'm gonna go have to read your articles now. Jesus.
Yeah, so no, that wasn't because of that I left the band. So it had nothing to do with working as a physicist. Actually, what's interesting is when I was recording drums for Define Imagination, during the week that we had booked at Pierre's studio, that both Steve and I have been talking a lot about during our our podcast with you guys. Pierre, it's just because he's recorded a lot of really, really awesome bands in Quebec, and pretty much everyone knows him in the metal scene and stuff like that. So for the people that are our age, I mean, we've all worked with him, and he's really cool. So, but anyways, we're at his studio. And during that week of me recording drums, in between breaks, I'm on the phone with HR, because I was just finishing my PhD then, right? So I'm on the phone during my breaks with HR because we're talking about job opportunities for where I live right now, which is in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I was tracking drums in September 2002. And in December 2002, I actually moved from Montreal to Knoxville in Tennessee for my work, and we've always made that work actually very well. Bart was he's a bright guy, you know, and he was working in a company also. He wasn't doing guitar full time. You know, none of us were doing Quo Vadis full time. And for him, he was in IT. So working on his laptop and working with servers and working with people at a distance, that's for him, that was just what he did. And for me, I moved to Knoxville and we worked extremely well together. I mean, it was actually really cool. I had my server because of my drum website, and we had other servers and stuff like that. And I would work on stuff, you know, in Knoxville and send him stuff. Then he would go and do some pre-production, record, and we always worked really well together. And a lot of the work with musicians, at least from how I've seen it work, you know, over the years, is when you click with someone and it's working out well, both musically and I don't mean business wise, but you know, in terms of communication and making the band work. You know, it's like, is the communication reliable? Is the relationship reliable? If the relationship is reliable and the musicians click musically, working at a distance really is not a problem. You know, the band I play in right now that I've been playing with for 10 years, Gone in April, the original first guitarist in that band was in Germany, and Julie and I were in Knoxville, Tennessee. When he left the band, I called Mark, the guitarist who played in Quo Vadis. That's how, you know, I got to know Mark, right? Was because of Quo Vadis. So I called up Mark and I said, hey, you know, we talked about the project, and he joined Gone in April. So we had that background, you know, with Quo Vadis. And when it came to the second album, also for Gone in April, I told, you know, Julie, I'd really like to get Steve, you know, on this album, and to have his ideas, his way of composing music, his way of composing bass. To me, I just really love the way whatever happens between his brain and his fingers, it's not only the way he plays it and that he plays so well, it's what he chooses to play to the music. To me, that is also mind-blowing. It's not only his skill level on the instrument, it is what he writes to the music he's playing bass to. It's those two things. And of course, we've gotten to know him super well over the years. And just like Mark and Steve and Julie and I mean, we're tight and good friends in that. So of course that adds a lot to it. But all that to say is that Steve's in California, Julie and I are in Tennessee, Mark is in Quebec City, and Aaron, our other vocalist, he does the growls, the death vocals. He's in about 20 minutes from Knoxville also, right? But the musicians are completely spread out. So the way we see it is, once you have a reliable relationship with those people and it works out well and you click musically, I don't care if you're in freaking 12-hour drive away. I would much rather work with someone that I can trust and rely on, and also that musically, when I listen to what they are doing, it makes me happy.
Yeah,
I rather work with someone who is far away.
You just
you
just explained Odious Mortem to me, dude. That's exactly how we are. Casey's down in San Diego. Joel's closer to me. He's in Santa Cruz. I'm in Pacifica. I'm like an hour away from where Steve is actually. And but we've worked together for so long that it doesn't matter where we're at. We're gonna continue to create, and we just know how everybody works, and we still want to continue making art together. So this is how we do it now.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because you just made me think of something. At one point with Gone in April, we had, without naming any names here or anything, so we were working with a musician that ended up, you know, who lived in Montreal, right? And we needed to, you know, he was doing the live concerts with us and stuff like that, right? And he lived in Montreal. And at one point, he was not able to join, you know, some of the shows that we were doing. But when he was able to join, it was always a little bit tricky to kind of make things work with him. And that, you know, in terms of like either, you know, just the simple stuff. You know, it's like showing up on time or getting a ride or getting dropped out. Like all the kind of like stuff that could be easy, maybe wasn't as easy as what it could have been. And at one point, what we ended up doing is I spoke to a musician who lived in Europe. Gosh, what country was he from? I'm drawing a blank right here. I can't believe. Was it Bulgaria? No, it wasn't Bulgaria. Crap, I'm drawing a blank now for some reason. I can't remember. Anyways, he made my life easier coming from Europe to come do the shows with us than it was to work with the musician we were working with in Montreal, in our own city, right? He got his visas to come, booked his flights, showed up with his luggage, everything was ready, everything was good, and he's coming overseas and everything was easy.
Wow.
So that's just another example that, sometimes you just work with people that make your life easy, and you got to be really happy and keep those relationships close.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, speaking of which, Steve DiGiorgio, when he was on, said a lot of really nice things about you and about how you were super awesome and easy to work with back in the Quo Vadis days, and even moving forward with your projects now and stuff. And
well, yeah, cool. It's the story of how he was just super under the weather and
he was
into
really
it kind of quick.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I will remember that for the rest of my life. So of course I'm living in Knoxville, right? And Bart and Steve are working on the bass for that entire week, right? Before we went to Piazza to record bass. And at that time, so to get Steve on that album, that was Bart's idea. He said at one point, I'd really like to get Steve on this album. What he did on bass on Individual Thought Patterns was so amazing. And to me, I wasn't a fan of bass at that time. I hadn't really heard anything that made me go like, oh wow, like this is, like at the time, of course, like I was. It's just a bass is not an instrument that stuck out, that stood out to me. And our bassist in Quo Vadis at the time before, Steve, really good guy. We were all super good friends, super tight. And he was doing his job musically on bass, but it wasn't what Steve was doing. And Steve is really special for bass, I mean,
totally.
And to me, I guess I never really, just bass never stood out. And so, Bart said, yeah, I'm emailing with Steve and, we're talking and whatever. And I'm like, okay, I mean, fine. I don't care, whatever. It was no biggie or anything. And then, so they're working at Bart's, on the songs and stuff like that. And then it was planned to have, I think it was 3 days at the studio, Pierre's studio up north. That was like 2 hours from Montreal. And, I thought, okay, well, I'll go for that weekend, because for me, remember, I moved to Knoxville in 2002, and this was going on in the summer of 2003, but I kept taking flights back to Montreal every 3-4 weeks for weekends, because we had like Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night a concert. So every 3-4 weeks, I take a flight back.
Was it direct?
No, that wasn't direct. No, I had to fly out of Atlanta or Nashville, then go to Toronto, and Toronto to Montreal. So, it gets back to what I was saying before, is when you have people with a reliable, working relationship, and musically it works, they could be freaking far, but if it works, it works, And for me, I did not miss one concert. We had flights and stuff like that, and always made it back. So then that time when Steve was in the studio, I was like, yeah, I'll go that weekend. So I took a flight and I showed up. And I remember when I got to Piazza, it was in, you walked in through the basement, and there was like a kitchen area and stuff like that in there. And Steve was there. And because, I didn't know Steve appreciate his bass playing at the time as much, so I didn't know him, and I looked at him, and I was like, oh, that must be Steve, unless it's
Steve DiGiorgio for the listeners.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, he's not any normal Steve. He's the bass player for Death.
And so I introduced myself, and it was super nice, and we're talking stuff like that, and so we're there talking, and it's like, oh, you want to hear some of the stuff? And we're about to continue. So we go upstairs and we start tracking, talk to Bart, talk to Pia, talk to the others and stuff like that. And Steve starts playing bass, and I thought, what the hell is this? And then, mind blown, changed my life forever on how I see the instrument. And it was like, this, you can do this on a bass. It's just, the instrument never stood out to me before. And of course, I was younger then also, so I wasn't paying attention to every single production detail and an instrument as much as I do now as a sound engineer, and of course, just being a musician after all those years. But the bass just, this was like eye opener, like crazy. Like, oh my gosh, I never knew bass could add so much musically to a song. I mean, it was absolutely crazy, and I have shivers thinking about it just now.
Dude,
And
it has grown to be one of my favorite parts of music.
Yes,
dude, is listening to the bass.
I just love this
amazing.
conversation, dude. It just keeps getting better. God damn, another cool fucking dude. Just keep going. I love it, dude. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, he's sitting down. He had his green ESP fretless 5-string, jeans with a Harley Davidson t-shirt, bare feet, playing bass, and I'm just kind of there looking and listening, going like, I didn't even know a bass could do that, again, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. So I'm listening to that and I'm completely freaking out because I'm like, the song is so much better now because there's another instrument that's coming in complementing everything else that's going on. Every instrument has its role. Well, now there's this new instrument that is adding so much more to the song, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And it was just so, it's just so weird because to me, again, that completely changed my life of how I listen to metal bands nowadays. The way I see the instruments in the studio here at Wave Transform, I love recording bass, and when bassists come in, I'm like, all right, so then we start working on tone and stuff like that. And every instrument's important, and you got to get tone on every instrument. But I think that in some cases, from what I've heard from a lot of musicians, sometimes bass doesn't kind of gets a little bit of a backseat sometimes on some productions. And to me, bass is super important, and I have a lot of fun with it, and it's really cool. And all of that is really due to Steve. And it's just when I heard him play that time, and then he goes, "Oh, you want to hear what I did on the other song?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like," and to me, I'm kind of like, they're in the studio and freaking out, and this is like, our songs sound so much better. I mean, I was happy with the songs the way they were before, but now it's like, oh my gosh, this is like, I mean, it just brought a completely different element to it, which was really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, my life has been changed since, and that's why, I mean, very corny to say, but it's absolutely true.
No, that's not. I love that because it's like, we all know what it's like to listen to songs that we've made over and over and over again, and they can turn, kind of get a little stagnant at times, and then or like, for example, it's me like hearing it from the Guitar Pro version, the 8-bit sounding guitars and all that, and then finally hearing these guys really record it, and then you're like, oh yeah, dude, now it's a fucking real song. And then the bass comes and you're like, oh dude, I didn't even know this was going to be different right here. It's like, but with Steve coming in and adding his elements to it where none of you guys knew what he really was going to do in certain parts, right? Or
no, but well, I think Bart may have had some idea, because I think so I wasn't there during the week that, that 1 week that they were at Bart's working on the stuff. So I don't know if it was mostly Steve learning the material or if he was playing it for Bart and then discussing stuff like that. That I don't really know there, but I know there was still some composition that was happening in the studio there. And I mean, I remember when I got there, I mean, it was just so crazy that, at one point he started doing something and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so cool. But because I was reacting so strongly to it, I think what happened is that was kind of building him up, and he was like, oh yeah, all right, let's go. All right, let's do it. And it was kind of like everyone was kind of like pumping each other up, So
yeah, dude.
Yeah, it was really, it was really.
Well,
cool.
I was gonna say just even this little like story post I put on like that song "In Contempt," that like intro from from Defiant Imagination, and I was just like, oh, the drums and everything is so sick, and it like starts and it's all fucking badass. but then like the bass is like blah, 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 like all sick. I'm like, God damn it, dude.
And he had
Even
such
the
a good
bass is just
you had basically
yeah.
the Montreal Steve DiGiorgio fill in for that video, right? It was Forrest, right? Wasn't it
Yeah,
Forrest?
Forrest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh,
because
yeah.
of course Steve is busy with touring bands and that. So actually, Forrest hadn't played fretless bass till he started playing for Quo Vadis.
Oh,
So
damn.
you know, he got his first fretless bass and started learning the parts because he was known as like a very amazing bassist.
Mhm.
But at the time it was fretted, right? And fretless bass wasn't as big as it is today. Now there's a lot of bassists that play fretless bass in metal, and Steve has definitely been the kind of lead guy that has helped kind of make that way,
Yeah, it's like
along
Steve and
the
Sean Malone and yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah, Sean Malone also very much so. But I think it's those guys that have really kind of and when you look at Forrest, what he's been able to do with his career, with fretless bass is amazing. And he's kind of, created more. And, so when you're looking at Steve and Sean and some others that I can't think of right now that, with fretless bass to have, gone on to the Forests, and on. And there's just more and more fretless bass now. And I think bass is not getting as much of a backseat as it used to be. And we have amazing bassists to thank for that, because the ones that are making that happen are the ones that write just amazing bass lines and play really well. And people are like, damn, that's cool. Let's turn up the bass and really get it more present in the mix. And, I think Steve's expression is what is it, you gotta, I forget how he says something like work for those decibels, or anyways it's something along like play good stuff and play it well, and it'll go a little bit forward, and people will want to put it more forward in the mix.
And,
So,
I've known like a lot of engineers and stuff. Like, I mean, people working with different engineers and stuff like that. I've known a lot of bass players that are fighting for that volume. They're like the volume's turned down. It's like really low, and they have to make their case for it. Basically, it's like basically they have to make their case to be to be present more, because the automatic the autopilot of a fucking metal engineer will be like, yeah, we'll make it so it's like it's a frequency that comes in, it's good, it helps the overall mix, and then like
end.
yeah, exactly. And then you have like people like DiGiorgio, and then you have like Forrest. You think about that Augury album, or multiple Augury albums, where he's just coming in and he's the guy. He's like all of a sudden like they're playing off him. He's like on I forget the second Augury album, but we toured with him on it. But it was like literally that Simeon Cattle song. I remember that the song was just like it's all bam dun 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 bam 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 dun dun dun, and like that was the groove of the song was the bass. Like before it's like he basically took over the spotlight. He's now the person that everyone is looking at in the band and stuff like that. And it was definitely like those two guys. It's like main people I can think of right now as well. But that literally took I don't want to say spotlight, but just really put bass as not just a frequency, but like a fucking a spotlight, or like something that I said spotlight again, but like something something that they could actually like someone could grab on that doesn't even know about bass. You know what I mean? Like they can part of the melody and the rhythm. The whole thing is the bass.
And I think something.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say another guy that has his unique voice that stood out was Roger Patterson in Atheist. Like that dude definitely was just as much out there in front as everybody else.
What's the other Atheist guy name?
Who? Oh, Tony Choi.
Tony Choi.
Yeah, he was on Elements, right? Was it Elements?
Totally. That was like the early kind of renaissance of bass. Was like Cynic.
But yeah, dude. So like listening to those
Atheist.
like bonus tracks from those Relapse reissues, and you get to hear the drum and bass tracks in those recordings. Same thing with the once Relapse acquired all the Death catalog, like all those reissues have tons of rehearsal footage or rehearsal audio and drum and bass audio, and you're just like, Oh, dude,
Totally.
you get to just sit here and listen to Sean and fucking Steve. Just that's it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I get giddy about that because you get to really, really focus on it with nothing else, no other
Yeah.
distractions.
It's
know?
funny we're talking about like how Yanic was talking about Ride the Lightning first, which is like the most. There's no bass. It's like literally that was the one, right, with no bass.
No, not Ride
right?
the Lightning. You're talking about the Quo Vadis demo.
Just for all.
I don't know. There's been plenty of stuff that we've been talking about that's been missing bass, like Steve and Human too. We didn't mention that he got, lost in the mix there.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think the other challenge is guitar amps have gotten, the tone has changed, right, over the past decades. I mean, guitar amps are getting richer in frequency. There's more and more a greater part of the audible spectrum that they're taking up. I think in maybe the 70s or something, they took less space, and the bass really stood out. And I know several years ago, I've never really kind of listened to Ozzy Osbourne stuff or whatever, but I put on just because I told myself, hey, I should really know this. I should really listen to it. And I listened to, is it Blizzard of Oz? That's the first Ozzy album.
Yeah.
And I listened to this, and I remember I texted Steve, and I was like, the bass, like you can hear the bass on these albums. And it's just because I think with time, it's just guitar amps have gotten worked, and they've gotten that they take up so much space nowadays that that space gets used, and then there's like a small amount left for bass. And in some cases, some people prefer to work with the guitar tone and not maybe have the bass as needed as it used to be, so it kind of ends up frequency wise sometimes taking a small back seat, which is unfortunate, because when you have a good bassist, oh my gosh, geez, what that does to the music, so
who's the guy that was on the Spastic Ink albums, to bring it back to Bobby Jarson back?
Steve Perez or
something like that. I forget his name. He's like
my brain says Steve Perez, but I don't know if that's right.
That dude rips. Whoever was on those albums,
he is insane.
Ripping
you listen to those Yanic, those old Spastic Ink albums?
Yeah, I have. Is it Incompatible? Was it that one?
Incomplete was the first one.
Incomplete. Okay.
Professor, I'll have to look it up.
The one with
without vocals or with vocals?
No, the one with vocals. What's
That's
that one?
Incompatible.
Yeah, Incompatible.
Okay, so that one. Yeah, I got with that one when Jason told me you got to listen to this drummer, and I thought, oh man, I got to buy this. And so there's some really good musicianship on that CD.
God, it's like it's so insane. Yeah, it's just
it's scary,
mind bending,
definitely. So I mean, you haven't really gone into too much into your becoming
Perez, bro.
Pete Perez.
Pete Perez.
But going into the your physicist stuff, or
physicist.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask how that like relates to your recording shit too. Like how do you apply like some of that?
Dude, he did the full harmonic with.
I know. I want to hear more of that. I want more. I want way more of that shit. Like how because you got to have perspective like. Beyond
this is actually real quick. This is a good question too for Yanic, who's actually. Is there any books that you would recommend for aspiring drummers and audio engineers that have inspired you? I mean, obviously you're a physicist. You have the brain. So is there any books that have blown your mind?
For aspiring drummers, a book. I can talk about a book that has kind of helped me a lot, but I don't know if you would really call that for aspiring drummers. I guess it could be. It's actually a book of rudiments. When I was going to play at the drum festival in 2007, I thought like, man, I mean, I really have to get better with the rudiments and all that, and I kind of work with that book. And I remember also the first time that I called Bobby at Jerzombeck when I wanted sessions with him, I kind of was getting more familiar with this stuff. And I said, I want to learn stick technique from you, because I mean, he's how do you pronounce that in English? Ambidextrous? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So remember, my first language is French from Canada, so I'm still searching for my words sometimes in
Dude,
English.
It's not even noticeable, dude.
Okay.
You're great at English.
I know. You're better than me.
And I thought like he goes, well, what do you want to learn from me? And I told him I want to learn stick technique, and he listened to what I had done with Quo Vadis, and he said, what do you want to learn from me? And we started talking, and I said, look, man, I got plenty to learn from you. Like, there is so much I can learn from you. And I remember what ended up happening is when I got to his rehearsal space, he goes, okay, I want to see, where you are with your stick technique, because you say you want to learn stick technique from me. So let me see where you are with your right hand. And of course, he takes his drumstick and he goes, with one hand, right? And of course, for me, I take my right hand and I can go not as fast as him, maybe 3/4 of the way with my right hand. And I'm going, he goes, okay, so let me see my left hand, your left hand. And I went on the left hand, and it wasn't very good, right? And he just kind of looked at me and said, I don't understand how you can play the stuff you're playing in Quo Vadis and your stick technique being what it is. I don't understand what I'm seeing your hands do right now, and what I hear what you do in recordings. I can't put two and two together. And well, maybe not as extreme as that, but pretty close to that,
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, he was starting to show me exercises that he was doing, and I felt like, oh my gosh, man, he is phenomenal, on top of being such a super nice guy and very humble and really amazing, right? So it's just kind of like, man, he is just absolutely crazy. And I left there going like, man, I absolutely suck. I mean, it is awful. But anyways, getting back to that book thing, it's the Book of Rudiments. So to me, what has helped me a lot is when I do my warm-ups before playing drums, I take my sticks and I got my feet on the bass drum pedals, and I go through rudiments with my hands, and I'll do a rudiment with my hands, and then I'll stop and I'll do it with my feet. Then I'll go to the next rudiment with my hands, I'll stop, and then I do the same rudiment with my feet. And I just go through, I have like my list of like rudiments that I go through, and I'll do that for about 25 minutes. And I will say that doing that has completely changed my drumming. And I will say I am far from being amazing with rudiments. Really, honestly, I am very far from being anywhere being amazing. Like I am really not that good with rudiments. But I will say when I started doing that, the Quo Vadis concerts changed dramatically, because what was happening is, again, right, we get back to what we were talking about before. You're at freaking minus 20 Celsius outside, which was, how much is that in Fahrenheit again? Like
minus 13. What'd you
It
say?
was 13.
So,
around that, yeah.
You're outside and you're running around, and of course Bart and I are managing the band and doing stuff like that also, and taking care of everything and everyone and stuff like that. And before, until that point, I'd get on stage and I wasn't really warming up. I was a young drummer, wanted to, playing, and we had merch to do. We had, checking with the stage manager. Like, there was all these things that needed to be done. And it's like, all right, I got to go put my shorts on because we're going on in like 15 minutes. And that was it. And at one point when I started doing those rudiments, what was happening is, instead of the concert starting out at this tempo and warming up with the first, second, third song and fourth song, and then by the time that we were 45 minutes in the concert playing at this tempo, now what was happening is I would warm up with those rudiments that I knew, following what was in that rudiments book, and I do with my hands, then with my feet, my hands, my feet, move on to the next rudiment and do that and continue doing that. And we start the Quo Vadis concerts, and it was at the album tempos when you need to be fully warmed up to play, and we were playing at those tempos. Years after, we started playing the click tracks, so I didn't have the choice, right? Because the click track is at album tempo when you have to be warmed up. But that book of rudiments really gets you to get better with your feet and with your hands. And for me, it's made a big difference, because once you start doing paradiddles with your feet and doubles and stuff like that, you get on the first song and you're blaring. I mean, it's a humongous difference when you warm up with those rudiments. So I would recommend, there's a book, I forget what it's called. Actually, I think I might have that on my website, but it's a paperback book. I think it's like $10 or something like that, and there's a whole bunch of rudiments in there. And if you just go through a few of them and kind of figure out the ones that you like that work out best for you and do that, I think that book is phenomenal. Nice. So long. Anyways, there's a little bit of history and story with that as well, to at least explain the impact that has had on my drumming. So.
That's
Nice.
killer, because it's like, dude, if anybody was like, what do you do for your technique? What kind of books do you have for vocal technique? And I'd be like, I have no idea, dude. But you have a book. When somebody asks you the question, you're like, oh, dude, yeah, check this one out. And I'm like, I need to get into something that I can like pass on to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, there's like for guitar, there's the John Petrucci Rock Discipline. That's like, so if like people like bring up like what was the thing or what was the video or something that you were like, it was like it's always John Petrucci Rock Discipline. That's like what Scott Carstairs. I was watching his a stream the other day, and he was just doing Rock Discipline warm ups. You know, just it's basically like Petrucci was kind of like you in a lot of ways. Actually, you should probably write a book. Like I feel like you have they have things on lock. Like as far as like understanding like, you know, what you need to do and stuff like that, and sonic, you know, like all the different like sonic properties and stuff like that. I feel like you should probably work on that.
I was just gonna say, dude, like, okay, so all this applying physics to sound stuff, like, I want to hear more, man. Like, if we can just get a little more of that, like, dude, I'm so into it. Like, it's like gold. I've never heard anything like that. Like, so like, if you have any other like thoughts about applying your like expertise in physics to like recording or sound or guitar, other instruments, like, dude, we are all ears, man. That's
well, there's
really
maybe
cool.
one thing that kind of jumps to mind that I actually brought up in the last clinics that I'd done in 2018, which were a lot of fun because I mean, to me, I prepared my PowerPoint slides and we had, you know, the giant screen and projecting it and all these things. And I did go into some kind of like physics stuff, and I talked about bass drum pedals. So what happens when, you know, a bass drum pedal, so you have the pedal, and of course you have the beater that's connected to the pedal board, and you have the spring, right? And the spring tension actually does a lot, or can do a lot for the drummer. So the way that, like say for example, if you have a very loose spring, let me ask you this: if you have a very loose spring and you press down on the bass drum pedal, what happens to the beater if you just press down on the pedal and you just let it oscillate? What do you think would happen if you have a loose spring?
It's gonna wobble like slower.
Exactly.
It would be
so
delayed.
The angular
It would be
frequency
delayed.
of it is basically going to go like this, right? But if you have a spring that is extremely tight and you press down on that pedal, what's going to happen to the angular frequency of the beater? It's going to go faster, right? So there's actually, I had some slides describing, I guess, the physics behind the spring tension and the angular frequency. And the way that I set my bass drum pedals is I've had drummers try my bass drum pedals and they say they're like Stairmasters. You know, they say, man, this thing is like, they say, I have no idea how you play with this and how your legs are not, you know, and ankles are not hurting. But what happens is mine are so tight. And the other thing too is some drummers have I'm just describing what works for me, right? So I'm not saying it's the way, but I'm just saying what works for me, right?
Totally, yeah, for sure.
So if you have the kind of the board, or I guess the plate, you know, where you put your foot, the foot plate or whatever you call it, and then you have the rod. Some drummers have their rod and the beater at this angle. Mine is like at that angle about. So what happens is when I press down on the bass drum pedal, there is a pretty strong hit on the bass drum, you know, to give good sound pressure level and get a good hit on the bass drum to really get that thump, you know. Actually, when I played at the Drum Fest in Montreal, we were talking about sound engineering aspects, and I was saying that a drummer asked me, "Do you do double hits on your bass drums when you do double bass?" And I said, "Well, no, actually, I don't. They're all singles, and one of the reasons I do that is to get a hard enough hit on the bass drum to get a good sound pressure level out of the bass drum to help the sound engineer get a better tone, to make it easier to get a better tone in for the audience." And I was kind of describing those things. It was kind of funny because when I was answering questions, at one point, the sound engineer, who I'd never met, he was in back of the room and he was doing sound, and he just said, "The sound engineer loves Yanic," and he just yelled out in front, because I was like trying to get drummers to understand that you need to help your sound engineer make you sound better. It's not like, no, I'm playing my instrument and screw you. You know, I'm not doing anything to help you. It's if you don't help your sound engineer, you will not sound as best as you can. And it's really a handshake. Both need to work together. And anyway, so all that to say is that I do singles to make sure I get a good hit on the bass drum. And so getting back to the foot plate thing, so when I press down on my bass drum pedal, the beater, because it's at a pretty high angle, when it hits the bass drum and it comes back, the spring is so tight that it really wings that rod back very fast and very strongly. So what ends up happening is I don't know what you call that, over rotates, because it comes back so fast. Instead of finishing there, because the spring is on so tight, it pulls it back so far, but then the spring starts helping it push back the other way. So if I were to press down on my bass drum pedal, it would hit and then it would go like this, right? Because it's so tight. So when I press down on it, it hits the bass drum skin, and then it comes back down, but on its way down, it starts making its way up again because it did an overthrow. It basically went too far, and the spring is so tight, it's helping it come back a bit, and then I can press again and continue that motion.
So you're saying your bass drum goes,
the bass drum does, but the bass drum pedal on its recoil back up after it kind of flew back and overcompensated, and on its way back, then I press again and it hits.
So it like
comes back. It's
the first time you kick it is what starts the domino effect.
Yes, exactly.
And then you just, it's all like timing and feel after that.
Let me guess. So it's harder to get it going, but it's consistent once you do. It's like going to sound really like even, because you got that it's like a bounce, right?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So the other aspect that when you take physics involved in that is the angular frequency when it comes back. If it's not optimal for the BPM that you're playing, it starts having some sort of like not interference, but like destructive interference, I guess, in a way that the bass drum pedal starts going against you, and it's harder to keep at the tempo where you're going. Because if I have my bass drum pedals super tight, and I try to play at a tempo that is much slower, it's actually harder for me to keep double bass drum going, because when that bass drum pedal comes back, it does the like that at a different frequency that is really conflicting with the high, with the BPMs. So it's kind of like you have to set. I should not use those words, because like I said, I'm not saying that this is what to do. This is just what works for me. But for me, I set the spring tension for what works well for a lot of the kind of BPMs and double bass drumming that we're doing in the bands that we're playing.
No, for sure. We've talked about that with Derek Roddy and also like Mike Hamilton and stuff. Like Derek Roddy was talking about that with like his old Axis pedals, like he has some of them set like a certain way, and then he has like the other ones set a certain way, like they have like the different adjustments that like he feels he can play more like slower tempos more comfortable, and like more
there
like
you go,
the standard. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the whole thing. Is it's like if something is specialized in one area, it might be like harder to use in another area, kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were asking about another physics thing that can get applied to drumming. That's an example right there, right? You're looking at spring tension and the angular frequencies and that for the spring tension and the BPMs of the music. So
nice.
Super fucking cool, dude.
Yeah, this is like Neil deGrasse Bercier, dude. Fucking...
Yeah, I know.
These are the metal community's Neil deGrasse Tyson, dude.
Awesome.
What's like the craziest, because like like all of us are big like nerds about like I don't know, just like even though I'm not like a physicist, I have like a degree in music.
You're
like,
not?
I don't know shit. Yeah. I work in like the dental field. Like I'm not a dentist, but like I don't know like any like anyways. So what's like some cool stuff that you'd like to say that you think is fascinating? Whatever, just,
what he's trying to say is like in your field, what's like one thing or the first thing or whatever that blew your mind when you grasped it, you know, like becoming a physicist, like, or
Yeah.
even being in school to get your PhD,
what
like
inspired you to become a physicist?
what was one of those
you know?
mind explosions? We want to and try and give it to us in dumb terms so I can kind of
Yeah, I can think of a story, and I think I'll kind of lead up to that to answer the question of how I kind of got into the kind of science field. So it's kind of funny, and this I like to tell people this story, and especially parents who are parents of kids that are struggling in math at school, because I struggled in math. I really did. And my father was tutoring me, you know, in the evenings, and you know, grade 7, grade 8, I was like mid 60s in math, something like that. Grade 9, I was like low 70s, you know, kind of something like that. And it's not that I think I was a little kind of spacey, you know, kind of thing, like wasn't really paying attention and really kind of focused in and really into it. You know, I wasn't digging into it. And when we got to grade 10, we had a history class, and I wasn't as interested in history as other topics. So really, honestly, I wasn't really studying, right? And I didn't do too well. I got a 50% on my first report card. And then we thought, oh crap, what are we gonna do with that? So I went to the principal of the you know, the grade 10 level, and I said I'd like to have some help with history because I got a 50 on my first report card. And she said, there's a girl that's a year older than you, and she's tutored some people, so I will check with her and see what you can do. So it's like, all right. So then got in touch with her, and she started tutoring me at lunchtime in history, not in sciences, not in math. It was in history. And so she's helping me in history. And at one point, I go to her classroom at lunch, and she was really depressed, very, you know, upset, not hysterical or anything, but just very, you know, unhappy. And I said, well, what's wrong? She said, I just got my math test back. I said, well, what did you get? Oh, I just got like a 94. And I'm thinking, like, what? You got a 94 and you're not happy about that? And she goes, yeah, but look at my other grades. And it's like 99, 100, 98, 99, 100. And she showed me all the tests. And I thought, like, I looked at of her tests and the grades that she was getting. And it's just kind of weird because I thought you can actually get marks like that in math. Like, it just never dawned on me that someone could actually do that well in mathematics.
Yeah.
And it was just, and it's kind of silly to think about it, but it just didn't click like, yeah, you can actually get almost perfect grades in math. And when I saw those grades, my math and my physics shot up the marks.
Wow.
She never helped me in math and physics, but when I saw what you could do, it kind of changed and all of my marks went up. And that's how I got into math and science up to.
So you saw those and you're like, okay, so it's possible. I see the possibilities, and now I do want to focus on this and try and achieve those same numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also see the links to music, though. You can see the links to music with people like yourself, or like a lot of the musicians we know. They think they're terrible. They think they're like, oh, in their, you know, in our heads they're getting 99s, 98s, and stuff like that. But in their heads, they're like, oh, I got a 80. They're like, you know, they think they could always do better. And that's what kind of, maybe there's the link with music and math, or, you know, like school or something like that, where someone's scholastically, like, they're killing it, but they could, in their mind, they know they can do better. But like, and it basically like influences other people to do better. You know?
And it totally, when I was saying the thing about algebra earlier, it's totally is attributed to that. I didn't focus. I was a smart kid. I just didn't apply to it. I didn't have a teacher that really made me, you know, want to apply myself in math. So it just never really was a thing.
Exactly.
And it's funny, and that's why I tell parents sometimes, because I mean, I've taught drums to, you know, drummers at different levels in that, but I have taught, you know, kids in the past that, you know, are in early high school or late high school, And I have discussion with the parents, and they said, "Oh, what am I doing? And what do I do with this?" And they're kind of asking me for my opinion. I tell them that story because for me, I think it was a matter of clicking. It just clicked. And I by looking at her marks, I didn't say, "Hey, I really need to buckle down and really start like thinking about my life and my future, and I should be doing better in math." That didn't happen. That discussion in my head didn't happen. It was just like it was a shock.
Yeah.
It completely was a shock, and everything clicked, and then everything changed onwards. And I can't explain it, and I don't know what it is, but I think it's important, to kind of, I like to tell that story because sometimes when parents have kids that aren't doing so well in school, it's like, well, it's possible that it could be a matter of time. They just might not have clicked yet. And I tell them I was mid 60s in math, and my father was trying to have me understand how to calculate the perimeter of the sidewalk around a pool, and I was just spaced out and not really on it. And then years later, now I have a PhD in physics, so it's just kind of crazy how the brain works and how something can click and completely change your whole life.
And it's on your own terms, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah.
It happened naturally, organically.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's really weird. And then the reason I got into, to medical imaging, because that's what I do now, right? We work with scanners, and I was in my third year of engineering physics, and this is kind of another kind of funny story, like the one I just finished telling, is that we had a term paper to do at the end of a class, and I don't want to say what class it was because I don't want to talk bad of a teacher or anything, but it was probably the worst teacher I've ever had in my life, and we had to write a term paper on something, and there was nothing in the list of examples that had to do with the topic of that class that really kind of motivated me. And after class, I went to talk to the teacher, and I said, "Do you have any other examples?" And because there's nothing really in this list that really kind of gets me on fire, And he said, "Well, you can talk about this or that." And I was like, this. And he said, "Well, you can talk about magnetic resonance imaging." I thought, "What's that?" And then he said, "Well, you put the body in a magnetic field and you get images of the body inside, like the body." And that's all it took. I thought, I need to freaking learn about this. This sounds crazy. And then my love for medical imaging started, and I did a master's in medical physics in the field of medical imaging and radiation therapy. And my PhD's in physics, again, in the field area of medical imaging for radiation therapy. And that's it. And I've been working in medical imaging now. It's going to be 20 years now in December.
Wow.
So
That's
again,
cool,
just a weird story that if I had not had that discussion, something very strange, right? If I had not had my tutor in history, I don't even know what would have happened to my, it's just kind of, there's these key things sometimes that happen in life that you're on a trajectory and something happens with someone that you think has absolutely no impact on your life that completely deviates your entire life, direction.
It's a physics metaphor, dude. I mean, it's like, it really is like, we're talking impact and all this kind of, it's like, it's mental physics.
You could trip on a curb and then accidentally hit your head on a person's knee, and then they come up and like, sorry,
and then
they're like, or your whole trajectory of music and everything changes because you tripped on that one curb. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy to think about stuff like that.
I mean, here's another example, right? So with Quo Vadis, right? My parents could have said, "You play in a death metal band, and this is like, like waste of time, and what are you doing? And you shouldn't be doing all those things." Everything that happened with Quo Vadis has had an impact on my life, and on in having the studio, working still in music, still doing tours, still recording albums, and my personal life is impacted too, right? Because I met my wife through Quo Vadis.
Nice.
Yeah. So you said that you guys are familiar a little bit with the Quo Vadis DVD, right? That's what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Wait, one of the reptilian chicks in the beginning?
No.
Oh.
The violinist.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, who is actually
job, my
the
friend.
singer and the the violinist for Gone in April right now. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's
so
awesome.
basically, I'm in the band with the singer and violinist who is my wife. So when we tour together, we're together
Nice.
and we tour, and it's really cool that way. I mean, we
Perfect
do
setup.
albums together. We have a lot of the thing is, if Quo Vadis wouldn't have happened, I might not be in this relationship right now. So it's just kind of weird sometimes. There's just these different things that you think is
Totally.
really nothing, and other people can say that this is a very bad influence on your life. You shouldn't be listening to this awful heavy metal and all these different things like that. And just that has had an impact on so many things. And I think also, I mean, we don't have kids or anything, but I think, sometimes these are stories that I like to tell to parents, that either from kids that I'm teaching or kids that come to the recording studio, and there's some issues, and with the kids in their lives, depending on how old they are. I mean, because I've recorded bands where people are like 10 to 14 years old and stuff like that, and when they come in, the parents come in with them, so I'm talking to the parents also. And it's like something that you think is a bad influence that could be completely meaningless for the rest of their lives can have a super positive impact on their lives. So it's
Yep.
kind of hard to tell sometimes. I mean, something negative could happen, and
Oh,
if you
man.
think I mean, all sorts of things that can happen, but you never know what can impact someone's life and putting on another trajectory, which can end up being a very positive thing.
That is huge. I mean, I've moved to other cities for relationships, stuff like that, and and it ended up like in just flames or whatever. And I thought, this is a terrible decision. My friends were right. I should have never been here. And then there's so many other things that spawned from it that were so positive that like I look back on it and like I'm glad I went through like everything that I went through, because I'm like, I met all these people, like my career changed, like everything changed because of that one decision. That like you could focus on the negative part of it, but like that's not like that's actually positive now. It's like now becomes a positive. Like if that didn't ever happen, then I would have never met these people, and I would, what I mean? It's like it's totally like I said with the curb analogy, just like you one little thing, and all of a sudden like your whole life is completely different. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, when people are a little bit in the dumps or something, and they're not really happy and they're struggling, just that they could be in a situation that they are that close from something happening that is going to change their trajectory, and they have no idea because they're in the dumps and they're having trouble. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, that one moment in time, that one thing that happened just completely changed the direction of everything, right? And I think that's kind of like the kind of thing to keep in mind when people are struggling, that it's like you could be like this far away from something absolutely amazing happening that is going to change your entire life.
Definitely.
And that's something that to me gets me kind of like really excited, because it's happened to me and you never know. Of course, it could go the other way, that things are going great and you freaking hit a wall and stuff starts going bad. But you don't hope for that, right? You just hope for the best. But when things are tough, you just kind of like look forward and keep going, because you don't know what's going to happen.
That's huge, because I have friends that are going through like tough times, like depression, stuff like that. All things were going one way at one time, and then all of a sudden they're not going one way. But to see I've been in that situation too, where I'm like, everything's like absolutely in the negative. There's nothing in the positive. And then I stuck it out, was like, this can't be, this can't be the rest of my life. This is not going to be. And then one little thing happens and all of a sudden, boom, everything's amazing. It's like, it's like going through those ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. I mean, it's like, you really have to ride it, but you have to ride it knowing that like you're writing it for the right reasons. And
how are you going to appreciate the good times if you don't experience the bad?
If we were all born billionaires and we got everything we wanted our whole life, like that might be a different
fucking assholes, dude.
That might be a different way of looking at things. But like going through, like you hear your parents and stuff, like just say like, oh man, like fucking adulthood's like a bummer. Be happy when you're a kid. It's so much harder when you're an adult. And as a kid, you're going, well, I don't. Whatever, dude. I don't believe you. And then you hit adulthood, and then you actually feel it, and you actually see it, and then you see the the kind of like when your mind's in the right place, you know, you have like an outlook that's positive. It's not necessarily cocky or like you know what's going to happen, but it's like it's there. You know what I mean? It's something that's like in your soul that you're looking for. It usually ends up in the positive. You know, if you think that you're deserving of something, or you think that you know, that this is I need this because, you know, this is what I deserve, then usually it doesn't work out as well as you thought it was going to work out. So I don't know. That actually is hitting me hard what you're saying.
Yeah, I think and one of the things that you said that maybe I'd like to emphasize a little bit too is that, you know, if we were born millionaires, we would be looking at life a little bit differently, well, probably very differently. But but the thing nonetheless is the learning and working hard on something is that when you achieve it, it's a much bigger deal. It makes you a lot happier than if it was just kind of given to you. You know what I mean?
Most
And
definitely.
I think sometimes the struggle to get to a particular place makes you enjoy that achievement a lot more than if it was just given, you know.
I
So,
totally try and keep that in the back of my mind all the time, dude. Like just creating something. Like everybody has an aspiration to make something. They can fantasize about what they want to make all day, but when the hard part is actually the journey to getting to the final product, and it's a really tough thing. It's not fucking easy. We've been doing it all our lives, guys, and it's never getting easier, but it's sticking it out and knowing, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and knowing that you want that final product. And you know, it may not be what you originally aspired it to be in the beginning, but it's still it's the proof of a completion of an idea, bringing an idea into reality. And so it's the journey is actually the shit that toughens us up, and that's the things that we look back on and we're like, yeah, we fucking did it, guys. Or, you know, I did it, you know. It's like, but it's just that in the present, getting through it. There's those times where, dude, you have those shitty nights where it's like, I'm gonna fucking quit, I'm done, you know. But no, you gotta get through it to the next
That's like
day.
the only for me, like the only possible like thought for me. I mean, I was raised Buddhist, actually, kind of a weird, interesting, you know, being brought up by like Buddhist monks and stuff like that. But as far as having that, for me, what I've noticed is when I've ever been cocky about anything in life, whether it's or like just not humble about something and expecting it, kind of like, even when it comes to like, you know, all these guys know that I like sports a lot. So if even like the universe will strike me down and I'm like, yeah, this is for sure going to happen. Here's it'll just be like the 1 in a million time it doesn't happen. Like every time I do it, it's like it literally is every time I do that.
It's the universe going,
yeah. And so like I even talk to my friends about like games I'm watching. I'm like, well, we're going to probably lose. Like we're going to lose. Like I don't like, and I actually have that.
You're trying to trick the universe into making.
I'm not tricking it. I'm like because every time I've been like, we're gonna fucking win, then we lose. So like my brain is like kind of conditioned. It's not like me like just saying it out loud just so that I win. You know what I mean? It's like me like understanding loss and what it'll be like, and then all of a sudden it turns out like sometimes it's opposite, but sometimes it's like, you know, when I'm like, yeah, we're fucking got this in the bed. I don't give a shit about this. Like just to use a sports analogy. It's like the universe will just be like, yeah, actually, no, this is the one time that this is not going to happen, and it's because you said that.
You're gonna fumble, bro. You're gonna fumble.
Exactly. And that goes back to the old, you know, being raised by Buddhists, you know, like Lama Tarchin, like one of the old teachers that we had when we were kids. Dude was most like compassionate, just like, don't worry about that stuff. Like, he saw me into sports when I was a kid and was like, don't like. Just be happy that you're able to play it. Don't worry about the. I mean, obviously, winning's fun, especially when people are talking to you and you want to like be like, I want to prove you wrong. But at the same time, it's like, just be stoked that you're, you know, it's a fun thing you're doing. Like, don't worry about the competition. Like, it's real, and it really stuck with me a lot.
Yeah. I think one thing that Steve had said back when we were doing Defiant Imagination he had said something along the lines like, just work for what you want to do, but don't have any expectations in return, or something along those lines, and it's just like, I think that's a really kind of cool way. That way you keep your eye on the target, you just keep working on what you want to achieve, but you don't expect anything in return. I mean, you hope for stuff in return, but the expectations and the hope are two different things,
Exactly.
So it's what's the word I'm looking for, entitlement or entitled or something like that, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word,
or wants and
again,
needs,
but
kind of too. It's like,
so like people that feel entitled because of reason X, Y, Z and that. And I think if you don't have expectations and you just kind of work and do your best to kind of get there
totally,
and hope that it works out, but at least the expectations aren't there.
And a lot of the just popular media and stuff will show people that are cocky with the expectations and then getting the thing too. And then you have this kind of like blueprint of like, well, they were full of themselves and that, they have this like attitude about it and they got it. So it kind of portrays kind of a false narrative on a lot of people's like hopes and stuff, because they're not actually trying anymore. They're like, oh, I'll just be like full of myself and maybe it'll come true, rather than just be hopeful. Like, just put in the work and be hopeful for it. You know what I mean? So, Jesus, this got really fucking deep, man.
I'm down, dude. I'm down. Hey, I'm not.
I'm gonna start crying soon.
I'm not drunk enough to sit out of this conversation. I could be in this for a little bit.
Gosh, yeah, I wasn't expecting to talk about stuff like this either. This is interesting.
No, dude, I will actually say cool. It is Anthony not drunk alert, dude. I'm actually.
And look at his eyes. Yeah, his eyes are full. He's good. I'm actually the drunkest one here, and I'm getting emotional now. So, can we change the subject? I'm just kidding. Yanic, so actually, speaking of changing the subject, actually, because the studio behind you was the first thing I saw when you came on camera, and I was like completely like looking at the roof up there, or the ceiling up there, and I was like, Jesus, like that looks insane.
Those things there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you basically, is that like, I mean, besides the MRI stuff and like, geez, you have so many things going on. Like, how do you handle all these different professions and stuff like that? Because obviously you're recording people there. Because look at that place, that's insane. Like, I can see this. Yeah, it looks amazing, man. So basically, like, how are you like balancing your time? Obviously, you're married. You don't have kids. Anthony, take note. I'm just kidding. It's like, how are you doing?
I still wear a bunch of hats, but not his hats.
All the hats
way heavier. His hats are way heavier than my hats, but I still wear some.
I think, the thing is that, I mean, when people say it's harder, the way that I see it is, I mean, for someone says, oh, physics is way too hard. Well, it might be hard for you, but it might come a little bit easier to me than it does for you, right? So
yeah.
If I were to do your thing, I would find it extremely hard, and maybe physics is just a little bit easier. So I don't look at things being harder. It's just what you're really kind of like programmed to do, kind of thing,
Got
But my, I guess, typical week, I guess, if you want to call it that. So yes, I have my my day job and my evening job, and in some cases you can call it a partial night job. But yeah, so during the day, I'm in the systems engineering group as a physicist for Siemens, and we do the what's called positron emission tomography scanners. It's molecular imaging, nuclear medicine, and it's kind of like used mostly as, if you can say, like a cancer finder scanner, which I guess the intent or the goal of it, without getting too crazy in the technology in that, the patient fasts, and before going for the scan, you inject like a radioactive sugar into the patient, and the metabolic rate of the cancer cells is greater than non-cancerous cells. So what happens is this radioactive sugar accumulates in the cancer cells. And when the patient goes for a scan, so after you've given the time for the body to absorb the sugar and for the sugar to go where the cancerous cells are, the patient will go in the scanner, and basically the scanner counts, right? It's basically detecting the radiation that's coming from the patient, but there's more, say, for example, coming from the cancerous cells, and the scanner reconstructs that information, that all that data that's coming from the patient, and creates an image of the body. And wherever you have more radiation in your image could possibly be cancer. It could be other other things, but it could be cancer, and that's when you start looking a little bit more into it. But
what's an example of something that wouldn't be cancer that would set off with the radiation?
Yeah, so that's more in the medical kind of range. So that's more like, that would be more a question for like a physician, maybe not as much a physicist, but I know there's something I've heard over the years, like brown fat or something like that, that it's a type of cell that may absorb it a little bit more, that you might think, might be cancer, but it actually isn't. But I think there are different theories around that also, but at least it gives a glimpse of what is going on inside the body, So in some cases, you'll see some very bright spots in the liver, and sometimes you'll see it all over the body, right? And then that, it could have possibly spread and that. So that's the kind of field that I'm in. And awesome. The people at Siemens here, they're amazing people. I feel like I work with my friends every day, which is really a really cool environment. So that's basically kind of like my day job. Then in the evenings, we have the studio work, or we have the work for the band for Gone in April. And also we started a tour bus company not that long ago that we can talk about also. But so we bought a tour bus, and so we're kind of getting into
like a full size, like
a Prevost.
Prevo, a 45-foot XL2 Prevo. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Prevo.
So,
what's they say? Prevo? I always said Prevost.
Well, it's actually Prévost. It's actually from Quebec. They're made in Quebec, those buses. So it's actually a Canadian bus.
yeah, there you go.
But yeah. So anyways, so in the evenings, that's when we do our work in the studio or on our band, Gone in April. And I do a lot of drum sessions for a lot of bands. So either doing drums for those bands, or just recording and mixing bands that come here to record and get their albums produced. So for example, tomorrow is Friday, but I have a band coming in, around lunchtime, and I need to prepare in the morning. So I'm taking some time away from Siemens to be able to do that during the day. And sometimes I'll work for Siemens on the weekend, and in the evenings, there's overtime sometimes. But all in all, it's kind of like in general that the day job and the evening job and that. So
that you've become that girl in the math class. I got the 94, and I'm looking at you with my 62 on the math test, and I'm like, I want to become the 94 now. Like, that's insane, man. How you manage your time is amazing. That's that's really.
I think one of the things that makes it easier to do that is they're two completely different environments, right? And beside the fact that we don't have kids right now, right? So if we had kids, that would probably be a very different story. But the fact that Julie is also a musician, right? Julie does that for a living. She has a master's in vocal performance and opera, and a master's in viola. So she plays with orchestras. She does operas. She does contracts for bands. She's a musician, so when we're working together on music stuff, my wife is also a musician, so she understands the passion behind it, and she does a lot of hours also. So it's just a passion that we share together and allows us to kind of continue doing that. And to me, the hours don't bug me as much. I think, I'm a energetic person, and I like to have a lot going on in my life. But because the Siemens environment is completely different to the music environment, I don't feel like I'm working those hours, because the brain is kind of tricked into thinking that, oh, you did 8 hours here, but that was something else. Now you're doing 8 hours there. They're kind of like, it's kind of weird. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just the brain doesn't put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, you've been working, way too much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know you guys don't have kids, but could you please have like 40 of them? Jesus
What?
Christ.
No, that would slow them down, dude. You want them to.
I know,
keep
but
going.
just like
These are
we
the
need
type
that-
of people you want to keep going in that environment. I'm thinking of like Frank Zappa and how he shouldn't have had kids because he was in the studio for 16 hours, you know, and like whereas kids didn't even see him for like months on end when he was downstairs the whole time, and that those kids got kind of fucked up from it. Maybe I don't know.
I think Joel's talking about genetics more than like.
Yeah. It's
Oh
like
yeah, okay, I
like,
get that now.
You think a Gorgrain band should have like 45 kids and Yanic should have 0? Like, no, I think it should be opposite. I want Yanic to spread those. Like, I'm like inspired by him so much right now. It's like,
totally, dude.
It's like the one guy that doesn't have kids. I'm like,
epigenetics,
Jesus.
dude.
Like, could you make some? 'Cause, like,
Epigenetics.
it's very impressive, man. I mean, it's like, yeah, the way you even treat your mind and your day and stuff like that, on top of everything else you've told us today, is like completely. I'm drunk now, so I feel like a piece of garbage. but no, definitely, man. I very like you're doing all the things that like I wish. I don't want to say I wish around Yanic. I know I'm capable of doing, but I don't do.
Wish.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
everybody's got that though. You just gotta get the fire under your booty.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but why do you think the reason is? And if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. And I don't want
to. I'm totally down to talk about anything. You can ask me anything. I mean, I started smoking pot as a kid, as a really young kid. My grades dropped dramatically when I started doing that. I associated with more. Geez, let's go into therapy, man. I'm down. I started just kind of like not caring as much. I mean, like, fuck it. And my grades went down. My mom's like, "You have ADD, dude. It's ADD." And I'm like, "I'm just stoned all the time, Mom. It's not ADD. This is like pretty easy stuff for me. I'm just not interested." You know, it was like if I had honestly, like I was hearing you talk, and I was like, literally thinking to myself, if I had a teacher that explained things like you did, I would probably be in the same level you are. You know, as a young kid. I really only had like maybe 3 or 4 teachers that really inspired me, and I was only really in school because of that, because I thought I had to be, and I thought that's the next step. You do the high school, you graduate, which I barely graduated, by the way, because I was straight A's, started smoking pot, like D's, F's. At the very end, I came back, was like, oh crap, I want to walk with my friends to graduate, so I did extra classes after, and then did A's again, and then I was like, I basically have just been kind of like lost without a paddle a little bit, in my life, of like looking where I'm supposed to do this, is where my brain kind of goes. My brain goes to this is what you have to do to, have to hit XYZ to do the thing. And I would start doing XYZ and I would just be like, well, I'm not, interested again. Actually, one of the paths my mom actually put me down, which I didn't go, was MRI school. And she was just like, she was looking at it as more like hey, this is like not a crazy degree you have to get and you can be a technician, is what kind of like she was kind of pointing at, an X-ray technician as well. So I really did actually look at that a lot when I was in 21, 22. But then I was really into music, so I was like, music was my thing, and so I was in college, community college, and I was in the middle of class, and I had been playing with Odious, and basically it came up to like, hey, do you want to be on a record label and tour with your favorite bands? And I was like, and my dad's a musician, he's all, fuck yeah, do it. And then went out, did that, but still just kind of like, and then ended up not liking the tour lifestyle either. So it was like super jaded, because the thing I've been looking to do my whole life wasn't satisfying. It was like completely
was not what you expected.
Exactly. I mean, which is a very common story with people touring. But and then just coming back, kind of like, and my friends are doctors and stuff, like, I did years doing this. So like, came back, friends are doctors, friends are married, friends have kids, friends have all these things, and I'm like, I'm in a death metal band. You know what I mean? So I kind of shot myself down a lot with that, and I don't know, just never. I mean, I'm right now I'm recovering, I guess you could say. Like, I'm making a great salary. I'm doing really good. I'm living in the most expensive place in the United States, and I have a nice house with a friend. But it's like things are going good, but like there's still something out there that I just didn't take the right path. It's not the thing I wanted to do. still what I'm doing right now, and I'm just here just because I'm like, oh yeah, my whole mindset became don't do what you love for money because you can ruin it, but do what you love. I mean, what you're kind of into for money, and then have your hobby be what you love. So that was kind of like that's like basically where the mindset went into, because I was like doing the thing. I was playing freaking Summer Slaughter like 2 or 3 years, like 2,000 people a night. And I was thinking to myself on stage, one of the times when I decided to like quit touring was we were in Milwaukee, and I, like all these kids like from front to back sold that show Hands Up. And I literally like was thinking in that moment, and I'm on stage on the monitor with my hands up too. I was thinking in that moment, like, I want to go home. And I was like, what the fuck? This is like, and we talk about like earlier podcasts, watching the opening bands for Cannibal Corpse, like, and just, they're just a struggling young band. And when I was a kid, I was watching them going like, oh my God, you guys are fucking living the absolute dream. Like the absolute dream. Like, this is exactly what I want. So, I mean, it was kind of like it was a curveball there a little bit. But I don't know. You asked the question, so you got the answer.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, the cool thing is we're all like, well, I consider us to be young. I mean, younger people might consider us super old, but I consider us
definitely
to be young. And there's still a lot of changes that you can, make it, even being older. I'm 47 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there's still, sometimes that I work with kids that are in their late teens and early 20s, mid 20s. And when we organize festivals here or do videos, in some of the cases, some of the young guys are like, man, I'm so tired. I'm like, come on, let's go. And it's like, we're still young. We have energy. You can, do things and make changes in your lives on that. So it's not like, we're in the last, couple of years of our lives where it's like, well, your time is gone, but you've decided, you can try to make a change, but you probably have 2 years left or something,
Yeah.
I mean, geez, no. I mean, it's like, there's so many years, and that's the kind of cool thing about life, right? Is that tomorrow you can, like we were talking about before, right? Tomorrow, this thing can happen that is completely going to change the trajectory, and then again, you could also get in a car accident and die. But
I was just
hopefully that's not
the trajectory could be straight to a grave, but
that's the excitement of life,
cool
though.
thing to kind of think about,
And we've made it this far, and we still got spunk, boys. We're still doing shit. That's what's
for sure.
Cool.
For sure. I mean, it's just like I just wish I had the mindset.
Like in the
Yanic has the mindset that I want. I mean, even though I'm not like, I'm not like saying like I'm not using it as an excuse that because I don't have that mindset I can't make the changes. But man, it's inspiring, man. You should be.
Let me ask you this: like, and actually for all three of you, what is like? Is there something that you can think of that if you wish that you could do, that you'd be like, man, if there'd be a way for me to do this thing that could be either extremely difficult to achieve or maybe not at all, that you'd really, really like to do? What if someone could say, hey, what would that one thing be? So do you have an idea of what that would be?
That's the hardest thing for me ever, because literally I was about to say just no and then go to Casey.
Well, I had a music school and then COVID, so for me it's like refinding my path. But I've got a new job going and it's going good.
But what would you? I know you have a new job that's paying you right now, but what would you like? Number one thing you'd want to do if you had an option? There's a genie comes in a bottle one day, tomorrow morning, and says you could do anything the fuck you want right now. What do you want to do?
I don't know. Like,
for me, it's like, I mean, I don't
go get some ramen.
I know. I mean, it's in there for me. I mean, it's obviously to be like, but the thing is, I don't feel like I'm lacking the education to really, I want to be like an astrophysicist or something, and I want to like explore the universe and do shit like that. I don't know, like as far as like understand, because that's like, I mean, that makes my mind like blow the hardest, is like understanding the universe. And I watch all these documentaries constantly and stuff like that. But the thing is, I don't have an understanding, so like it's not like something I could say I want to do. You know what I mean?
I feel like a lot of my friends that I have like a lot of friends that work in science and different degrees and of that whole field and stuff, or like chemical engineers and all kinds of different varying degrees of that, and they all seem to be very passionate about their work and really seem to love it, and they do very well, and have a lot of friends that also do very well that work in like tech and computers, and they seem to hate their jobs. And so I've noticed that. So
okay, my answer would be to go with the art life. If I could live off of creating art, completely,
like, what do you mean? Like paintings or like
anything? Making I'm already making music, but yes, just like if I could even get into film, like just like doing that whole thing, just like every form of art that I could possibly just like get my hands on, get my hands off of tools, stop working on cars,
Okay,
and just
you said filming, that made me think of something, right? So, for example, I mean, you guys have obviously a lot of experience and decades with music in that. Have you thought of getting into filming music videos for bands?
I mean, that would be awesome.
it'd be fun.
It'd be a way to kind of get into,
I'm gonna hire you as my life coach. Can we talk all the time? Like, can we like talk like once a week?
Can we have like a 4 times a year Yanic drop in on the podcast?
No, I mean, I definitely, I imagine making, obviously like the whole production seems fun. Everything seems fun to like put together a music video, and like having the final product seems fun. That all seems fun to me. When I was a kid, it was all web design, like 14, 13 years old. I was designing websites on dial-up, and interviewing bands and stuff when I was a little kid. And that was just an automatic response to my interest in music. That was like immediate what I did. That was like, it wasn't anything like I, like had to talk with someone. It was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do like a website, do the graphics for it, have like, news and stuff like that. Like it's like a organic kind of feeling of what I actually came out with, and actually got pretty successful, by the way, too. I was like 14, 15 years old and had this website, sickness.net, and it actually took off a little bit. I was interviewing bands, but the thing is, like, I still had that hunger for like, what I'm saying is maybe the tour life kind of like wiped that out, where I was kind of like, all right, well, they're all struggling and doing their thing, and it's not like the magic wonderland that I thought tour was going to be. And so once that was kind of like different, then maybe my mindset changed a little bit, and I was like, oh, I'll start playing music then. And that's kind of like where I say like way too much, Jesus. But as far as just getting into it, like, there was an initial like, it's really cool to hear you talk, because there was something organically coming out of me that was not like provoked in any way. It was just what I wanted to do, and I feel like that's been lost, in the grand scheme of things, and especially when you get older and older. You're like seeing people doing, seeing the 94 test score, and they're just being like, "Fuck, I can't do that." You know what I mean? And then
I think sometimes, I guess the way that I see it is, if you kind of think of one particular aspect, and it'll like, if you say that, like the filming, that if we use that as an example, right? So you said, oh man, if I could do this or that, and you said filming, and to me the idea that jumped into my head is like, frig, musician, music, creativity, filming music videos, right? And you get in touch with bands and you start getting, and luckily with technology nowadays, it doesn't cost that much money to get equipment. I'm not saying good equipment doesn't cost a lot of money. Good equipment costs a crap ton
a lot of money.
But to get started and stuff like that, to get a camera and a good lens and the stabilizers and stuff like that, and man, it's just, you work with one band, then they hear about it and see it, and then 2 other bands call, and then 4 other bands, and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, I never thought of doing this, and I started, and now look what this has kind of like turned into. And it comes with hard work, and you have to put in the time, And it's like I saw someone send me something actually from Siemens today, that it was like a cartoon that was somewhere on, I think on LinkedIn, that it said it was a guy saying, man, I would really wish I'd be good at something. And the other guy says, well, if you want to be good at something, you got to suck at it first. And it's like, yeah, well, I guess that's kind of true, but you put in the time and you get that done. And gosh, next thing you know, 5 years from now, you could be freaking running a business with just filmography and whatever, doing exactly what anyways.
So
it's just kind of like
start a Tony Robbins thing. You're like insane.
When you quit,
I'm actually really inspired
when
by
you start something and then you quit, like me and piano, where I quit after like a year, it's because you didn't want to fully get through that suck stage that you just were mentioning. You got to
growing your hair.
But
It's
maybe
like growing your hair.
it's not what was. Maybe it just didn't click for you, right? Whereas maybe just like when we give the example of music videos, maybe if you got into it, you'd be like, man, this is so freaking cool. And now all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. and you're like, where'd the time go? Like, I'm having fun like crazy. And this is nuts. And all of a sudden a year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, and it's funny because at one point I was talking to Julie, and this is several years ago. And she said, I didn't see the last 5 years of our lives go by. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, geez, I didn't see my 30s go by. Like my whole 30s to me are like completely non-existent in my
20s too.
Being so busy with stuff. And it's like you get involved with geez, if doing videos for bands and stuff like that. I mean, obviously you have the musical aspect, of it, and just learning a bit about, the cameras and the editing software and stuff like that. And all of a sudden it's like, geez, man, you're the guy that people go to, so maybe that'll make you click, or it might be something completely different than that. But
I mean, the podcast thing is kind of like a lazy version of that. It's like, we could just put a camera on us, and we're like, people like us when we're in person with each other. So maybe we'll try to do this virtually. It's like, that's basically, it's like our conversational skills are decent. So maybe we'll, but my mom probably has a podcast by now. It's like everyone's got a podcast now, so it's kind of like it's not going to be like lucrative, but like it's a start. No, it's definitely a start. Like especially,
I think I'd like to think that we just have like our little corner of the gigantic grid of podcasts, and not everybody's really focusing on like exactly what we're doing. Everybody's talking to everybody, but like, our format, is there really, with the underground metal, is there any other podcast doing the same thing, going long form? We're 3 hours and 16 minutes into this right now.
I know. See, that's what you just said. Like before you know it, like time has flown, and it's really fun to bring people that we look up to, and just all of a sudden we don't know what they're gonna say. Like we're all walking up in here and just going like, oh, we like your music. Okay, well, what's going on now?
Dude,
that's 3 hours and 16 minutes. And
well, actually, something I'd like to tell you guys, actually, because I've spoken to some bands that, I record here in the studio, and, oh, I'm going to be on this podcast. And I'm like, oh, I heard of that. Yeah. And some guy said, oh, yeah, I watched a few of them. They're really good, those guys. So it's like people in Knoxville here know about it, So obviously you guys are doing something right?
Oh,
because
super cool.
People in Knoxville know about it. So, yeah.
Hell yeah. How far is that from Nashville?
2.5 hours. Yeah.
Okay. We gotta hook Cheney and fucking Naveen up with him.
Yeah, and the guys that reacted that way, the ones that I had spoken to in the last few days, I mean, they're kind of like early 20s and that, so it's gotten to them.
Yeah.
And I know that we're early. I mean, we're older than that, but it's gotten to different generations also, right? So I think that's
cool,
an achievement for you guys that shows that. I mean, you have been working hard, and
it's
I think getting the word out.
Sure.
So yeah,
we haven't really missed a week, dude. We haven't missed a week, and it seems like we continuously are finding interesting people to talk to each week. Shout out to David Siskin, by the way, Warbreaker, up in the comments. I saw you. What up? I'd like to see that shit too, or watch and listen to that shit too.
Joel's mom.
Comcast, that's funny.
Do you know what the fuck's going on? It's his motherfucking birthday, bitches.
Is it
That was his
David's birthday
birthday?
today, dude?
It's
Happy
David's
birthday.
fucking birthday right now.
I am not-
So Yanic, this is the guitar player of the Odious. Is like one of the original guitar players of Odious. He's just he's getting our comments right now, and I'm drunk, and I'm sorry.
He's drunk and he puts up an Anthony drunk alert. Where's the Joel drunk alert, dude? It needs to go around the whole border of the video. Fucking. All right. I guess
Come
now
on,
you
never
can
drunk.
Happy birthday. There you go. What up?
shit.
Oh, there we go.
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
He was
I
he was on a
Happy
couple of times. He's been a previous
Come on.
guest twice, right? He was on your birthday and the Odious.
Happy birthday, David.
Okay, so maybe I am the drunk one. I double clicked. But Yanic, man, Jesus Christ, man. This is actually one of the
dude.
All right.
I don't want to spat upon the previous guests, but Jesus Christ, man, this was I was very impressed with this one. I was very
I don't know if you guys
spat
were
on
expecting to
anybody.
get off topic like this, so I'm sorry if this is not what you
Oh,
were
I love
planning,
it.
but it
No,
looks
I
like
love it.
this is what came out. So.
It's funny because I
know.
texted both Casey, Anthony, and I texted Murray because Murray's always like, you guys are in the weeds, and like when we got in the weeds, like a bunch of people like joined in, and then like when we got out of the weeds, like people started leaving. Like,
These are the
yeah, I think the weeds are
these
the thing.
freshest, best weeds we've had, I think, on this podcast. The freshest,
love-
fullest,
man.
best weeds.
Going into the fit, like just the whole like I'm gonna rewatch this like 3 or 4 times with the whole harmonic thing that you're talking about. So
Yeah,
That's good stuff.
David's got my back, dude. I see the question mark, 2 exclamation points. He's on my side, dude.
let's give this guy a shout out. Let's give this spammer a shout out, dude. What's up, spammer?
Oh gosh, that's
You want to buy followers?
Everybody
hit up Harry13, dude.
Everybody go to d.ly. Fucking bullshit.
Do you want to buy
Hey,
followers? That's
Yanic,
great.
he's
So
got dreams and
funny,
aspirations
dude.
too. He just wants to give people more followers. Like.
That was good, dude.
Right on.
and he's got them.
man.
He's got fresh followers on
Fresh
sale,
followers. Yeah, he's got freshers.
bro.
But
Oh,
Yanic, look, actually, I want to do this again, like
dude,
every other
you-
weekend if you can. This is awesome, man. I'm actually really impressed.
I say this to a lot of guests. There are
Oh, yeah.
a lot. Pretty much everybody has been welcome back. But dude, Yanic, dude, we got to get you fucking back on, dude. Like, I love these conversations, dude, and I'd love to even go deeper into the physics shit and see what we can try and like uncover
Totally.
about all of this, dude, and what physics has to do with it all, because it really does. You
Yeah.
know?
You know, what'd be
So-
awesome too is like I know Yanic gave me like a bunch of good information about like what I should focus on, what like a mindset thing. What if like we did this and we just changed Yanic's life and he becomes a podcaster and he's like fucking number 2 in the world and he's like Tony Robbins is number 3 and
best.
Yanic's
Yeah,
number
yeah.
2 and like
I always knew you had it in you.
yeah, no, it's awesome, man. It's really
Oh,
cool
cool.
information you gave us. I'm
Yeah.
really
it's
appreciative
kind
of
of
it.
something that I kind of enjoy to in a way, because I know when we were in maybe not so much in high school, but in college and university and stuff like that, when I'd be talking to friends of mine and they'd be saying, oh, I'm not really sure, do I apply for this and apply for that? And I seem to be always that person that's like, so what do you want to do? Like what
You
are
got
you
it in you,
interested
man.
in? What? And it wasn't necessarily stuff that I was interested in, I mean, but it was like, man, what makes you tick? What's that thing that gets you fired up? And sometimes the tricky thing is they haven't found that thing yet. But I think the really cool thing is they can just give one thing to go off of and say like, oh, okay, so you give this information and have you thought of this or that or that? And then, they say like, oh crap, man, I never thought of that. That's a good idea. And then you talk and come up with and all these different things. And, it's
Totally.
just kind of really neat to see someone else get super excited and get a new idea and be like, shit, that is so cool. I hadn't thought of that. And then again, just kind of build off of each other's
Definitely.
excitement and stuff like that. It's kind of fun. So for some reason I have an interest in that and I find it really cool.
Well, if you ever want to give
see
a shot,
people
like,
get
just
excited,
if you ever want to like take a stab at it, man, just come. We'll give you the Cali Death, whatever. Just go on and just start talking to people. Like I'd be super down just to hand over this, like start like a little segment. Just go off and start talking.
Dude.
You know, it'd be awesome.
We have some ideas that we can. Yeah.
I don't know if people would like that, but what do you want to do with your life?
It'll just be me in the comments all the time. Like, I want to do this. I want to do this. What do you?
No, dude. I think that we definitely could do something with that for sure.
No, for sure.
We could be the audience just like we are right now.
Yeah. No, you got it, man. Yanic, you got the thing, dude. I'm just letting you know. This is the uneducated drunk guy telling you got the thing.
I know what I want to do with my life. Work from home, dude. It's the shit.
I don't know.
Yeah, dude.
No,
Have you guys all worked from home pretty much with COVID?
No,
I
don't.
I've been
I do a lot.
Wrenching through the whole thing.
I just wish.
And I'm gonna go ahead and shit on his dreams real quick. So it's super sick for like it's super awesome when you work from home. Like when your work is like work from home. And especially during the pandemic, it's like you have to work from home, so you have to do this. And I work in like an IT world, and it's fun. Like you're like at home, you get to watch your music videos, you get to or whatever you want to listen to. And I'm saying week number maybe 28, 29 of doing that. It's like you're working from the same place that you have pleasure from, or just when you're off, you go to this place, and now it's. The place that you have off is now your work environment, and you're like, I want to go to work, dude. Like, this sucks. Like this is like, like you want like to feel accomplished at work. Because I'm like, I got really good at working from home, so now I'm accomplishing all the tasks I need to do, but I feel like depressed after I'm done. I'm like, this is like I'm still at home. I'm like, all right, weekend. All right, here we go, and I'm back. You know what I mean? It's like the fun time is like, oh, okay, and you're in the environment still. It's like I feel like. It's fun for little periods of time, but like for the full time, I think I fantasized about working from home. Like that was like the number one thing I wanted to do. And then came to the fact where I was literally figuring out how to like do as little as possible and sleep as much as possible. And I was like, this is not a good.
I think it depends on like what you're doing for work though, Like I'm like talking about just like OnlyFans and FinDom. Like that's all I want to do. So like from home, it's cool.
Yeah, dude.
Casey's like, I just want to make porn from home, and then like
I don't like want to go to an office to do that,
and then go fish with David.
yeah,
make porn and then go fish.
Yeah, then I got like early because I like made like $700 in like 7 minutes, and then just go fishing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just show my butthole for a bit. It's cool.
All right, Yanic.
All right, so we've degraded.
Please come back. Please come
back.
Dude. No, seriously.
We won't hit you up super fast.
I want to have a deep conversation with you about like the how physics tie with like music theory and crazy
we already alluded to that.
I know.
There's a word that I was using on the Steve podcast.
Come on.
One thing that just kind of jumped in my head when you said that, and it kind of had to do with a question that someone asked earlier, and we didn't actually go to that about the sciences and stuff like that. So I remember it's kind of like a story when I was doing my undergrad in engineering physics. For some reason, the story popped into my head with what you said. It was the quantum mechanics class. And the way it was given at our school is that we had a teacher, but it was, I know the word in French, I don't know it in English. When you kind of teach yourself, the teacher is not there to give a lesson and teach the class. You study on your own, and you get to class and you ask questions, and that's all that is. What do you call that in English?
No lecture.
Okay, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're studying, at home and that, and one of the kind of like freaky feelings I got at one point is when I was studying a chapter in quantum mechanics. And when you're studying quantum mechanics, have you guys ever read up on that, or just to kind of have like an idea of
We're so dumb, dude. I have no like.
Okay, well, look, I'll say something that's really impressive about it. It's just completely different. Once you do like kind of like classical physics, like just the mechanics and stuff like that is really, really freaking cool. But when you get to quantum mechanics, it's just a different way of seeing physics. It's a little bit like I don't know if you guys have done calculus or that, like derivative integrals and stuff like that. But it's like when you do math pre-calculus and you get to calculus, it's just this new world and new set of tools that opens up and just again blows your mind, and you're like, what the hell? Like someone came up with this stuff.
Wow.
And how does someone come up with this? You know, it's like you learn it because someone came up with it, but the person that came up with that,
no, I know,
like what the hell? And I had an evening, I still remember, it was a chapter, I think it was on the you know, like the new way to see the you know, the atom and the orbitals and stuff like that for with quantum mechanics that's just completely different than classical physics. And I'm reading the chapter and studying, and I had this really uncomfortable feeling in my head that was kind of like scary, that someone that is human can think and come up with this, like with these ideas, and create a completely new way of seeing the sciences, like with using new math and new, you know, physics concepts and that. And that was a really kind of like weird feeling out of all the years that I studied in sciences, that you know, this whole like people when they say that kind of mad scientist thing, that, you know, it's kind of like I kind of had a small feeling of that for a small amount of time, and I realized that it was like brain overload, and it was like it's starting to get crazy, and I was starting to feel not really myself, just because I was so impressed with what I was reading and just under kind of shock that someone can come up with this. Basically what I did is I just closed my book and I walked out of my room and just went to do something else for a while, because it was just kind of like, again, you know, a shock on the brain, just like when, you know, the girl that was helping me, you know, with the history tutoring and stuff like that, that was a shock on that was a positive one, but this whole thing on that was just a kind of really weird feeling. So
yeah,
you know,
dude,
but that was kind of time that
I
know,
just went through it with you, because I'm thinking like, man, yeah, being introduced to something so foreign, but like tied into what you do. So it's like I don't know.
And the kind of crazy thing is when you get to kind of read up a little, and you can find books like one of the best books I've read in my life was Einstein for Beginners, and it was a book. It was cartoons and very easy ways to describe in like at a high level relativity, special theory relativity and all it was cartoons and little call outs and stuff like that. And the next thing I knew is I was tutoring people that were one physics class ahead of me, and they weren't understanding the concept of it because their physics teacher had not described it in a way that, you know, enabled them to really understand it. And here I'm reading, you know, a cartoon book that was written by a scientist, and I was able to kind of explain the overall concept to it. So it's not the complexity of the book, you know, to really kind of grasp some ideas that are the kind of overall high level, you know, concepts. You don't have to go deep, you know, you just pick up a very simple book in layman's terms, I think they say, and man, that can freaking blow your mind and just kind of like trigger all these new thoughts in that. And I think the thing with quantum mechanics that was happening that was just really weird is that it's kind of like everything you've learned up to this point, it's not like throw it out, but kind of, because now we're going to introduce you to something different, and it's like, what the frick is this, you know? So it's like it's just kind of really exciting, you know.
Building it's like building your brain capacity up to the point to where now they can introduce a new thing.
Yes,
it's not that you have to throw out everything you just learned, but you know,
but it's like you're relearning it a different way, you know. So imagine you're going and you're studying and you're learning for years and years and years working on something, and you get to a point and someone tells you, okay, that's not really how it works. We're gonna really tell you, and then you're like, what the hell just happened? You know. So yeah, it's kind of neat. So, you know, you were saying you were interested in like, oh, if you could be an astrophysicist or stuff like that, you know. So, you know, like, find a good book that's easy to read and, Man, that
Yeah.
could make you a
I'm,
lot happier than going in equations and that.
In like 10 years, they'll teach quantum mechanics in like second grade.
That'd be sick.
I know.
So
It's like Scott last episode was like just starting. He's like, yeah, I got into like metal and stuff, so I started with necrophagist.
Right. So
Wow.
I was like, it's like that's your starting point. So it's like skating or anything. It's like, you were a skater, Yanic. Like people like now are starting with like the craziest thing when they're like 10, and that's like the most insane thing that's been done that was not even conceivable when you were a kid. Is like being double whatever.
Pushing the limits.
Are you saying it's inconceivable, Joel?
It's inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
I'm actually gonna raid Max Anomalous real quick because I'm gonna try to do it, see if it works. Because last time we've actually not done it correctly. I guess Murray says we haven't done it, like last 2 times haven't worked. So let's see what this is.
All right.
We're fucking.
Well, should we do the wrap
We're
up?
veterans, so I feel like we should be good at this point.
Should we do the wrap up?
Let's do a wrap up.
Just kidding.
Okay. Well,
Yanic, can you like get on at like 2 p.m. and let's just talk for like 24 hours?
I hope this wasn't too boring for you guys.
No, are you kidding?
It wasn't all
opposite.
music, so yeah.
No, we want.
We're on episode 68, and I'm literally like,
kidding, dude. No.
like fucking my jaw was on the ground like 19
This
times.
is like one of my favorite episodes so far.
totally, dude. I don't usually
So
listen
sick.
to these, Yanic, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna listen to this one again.
Oh fuck yeah,
Oh,
me too.
gosh,
Hell yeah.
yeah.
I need to like take a notepad next time.
Yeah, it was super cool. And that's
What?
again, I just want to say, like, that would be exactly what I'd want to go into if we had you on again. And if you're more than welcome to come back.
Oh, I would love to, man. It was really cool talking to you guys. I mean, it was really,
Yeah,
really fun,
fun.
and I learned a lot too. And yeah, I'd love to join it another time. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
super cool, Yanic. Awesome.
Maybe we can do an episode with you and Steve again. That'd be super fun.
That would
Oh,
be
God,
cool.
yes.
How fun would
dude.
that be? Yeah.
That'd
Yeah,
be
you could bring
super
your
cool.
wife on too if you wanted. You could do it. We could do like a
Yeah. She could do that too. Yeah.
Do
yeah.
it on an April centric episode.
dude,
Nice.
that'd be
Yeah,
so
dude.
fun, dude.
Yep.
Well,
We
right
can
on.
absolutely do that.
Cool, guys. Well, so Joel, you're setting up the raid action.
Oh, it says no.
This is no.
I hit up Max. I was like, did we raid these? And someone's just all no.
I don't know how it works.
Well, we're
then.
pros, so I don't know what people are.
Oh no, you did it. He says I did it.
We're-
I did
we're
it. Yeah,
Twitch-
there
Oh,
we go.
it did work. It
Okay.
did work.
Oh,
Oh,
you
We just got it.
sick.
And
Right
he's all
on.
excited now. He's all celebrating. He's all sweet. Thank you. You guys rock. Okay. I'm gonna close
Boom.
it.
All right.
'Cause
Well,
I can't hear multiple things.
Speaking of
talking
raid,
at
I
the
got some new roach traps today.
Fuck.
same time. Speaking of
Roaches
peeing,
suck,
like,
dude.
we should
People
wrap
posted
this up.
those little. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Let's do
all
it,
right.
dude.
Joel's
Wrap
got to
it
pee,
up,
so
guys.
we better.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks so much to hang out with us this week. Once again, Joel's got to pee, and come back over to Twitch if you're over on YouTube right now watching this, and come over to Twitch. You can interact with us. You know,
And it helps. It's supporting other people. Like we just rated someone. We just threw our
Yeah,
people
yeah.
at someone else. We had 2 people today throw their streams at us, and all of a sudden our streams got like triple, like over or more, like fucking people watching.
Yeah. So if you're a subscriber at YouTube, come over to Twitch, follow us there. If you're not a subscriber, just hit the subscribe button, dude. It's all good. And we're gonna be back next week, hopefully with the professor and Yanic. Once again, thank you so much for being
you
with
so
us,
much,
dude.
man.
Giving us
Thank
your
you for
time.
having me.
And
Awesome,
So
we'll
fun.
see you guys next week. BattleForgeCoffee.com. Go get caffeinated and swagged out. Boom.